Okay. Hello. Hi. Hello. Welcome to the stream. Just a bit of preparation for you all. My internet is still not much better than it was last time. So we're just going to have all of our fingers and toes crossed and hope that the stream doesn't crash like it did last month, because I really don't want that to happen this time. So I've basically spent the last 6 minutes panic checking my internet, and already we're having problems. So I think this is something that is going to be a regular issue. So let me know if it drops hugely, but just don't spam the comments, because obviously if it goes, it doesn't matter how many times people comment about it, that's not going to fix it. All that does is take up space in the chat. So if, say, like 1 or 2 people post about it and not like fill the entire chat, that would be great. But I suspect that it will go down again today. I'm working on the principle of expect the worst, hope the best. So if it does go down, I will just try the stream again. So if it suddenly disappears, I would go back onto my channel again, and you might find there is a secondary stream that is running, that is the backup stream, because I actually want to put a stream out. Now, I know a lot of you asked me in comments and via DM what happened to last month's stream, so I'll just briefly touch on it. Last month, I was having a really bad day. I was having a bad day, and my internet was having an equally bad day. My stream spent about an hour and a half non-functional, so I ended up not putting the hour and 50-minute video up, because like an hour and a half of it was just me glitching and jumping around the screen, and I didn't see much benefit in that being up. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this time will be a little bit better. So, hello. It is 4:20. Well, technically, if you live in England, it's 2004, because we put the dates the normal way round. Sorry, Americans, but it's weird to me that you put the month before the date. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And it is the 39th, I don't know. Honestly, I think it's the 39th live stream. My brain is frazzled today. It is so glorious. It is so sunny. So, as usual on the streams, everything is done chronologically. I go from the top of the chat to the bottom of the chat. So if I haven't got to a question yet, it is probably because I haven't actually reached it yet. So just don't spam the chat, because obviously it won't make me answer the question any quicker if I haven't seen it yet. And I am not always going to answer every question. So if I've already answered the question, or if it's a question I have a video on, or if I just don't want to answer a question, because sometimes there are questions that I just don't want to answer because I don't have a good answer, or I don't know enough about a subject, then I will probably skip over them just so that everyone is not having to hear me say the same things time and time again. But if you're on this channel and you're a subscriber of this channel, you likely know that I can talk for England. So I hope that you will give me a little bit of freedom there to repeat myself if necessary. Okay. Whew, that was a whole lot of words, and it is very bright in this room. I feel like I'm being lit up. So we have to hope that everything works. I'm desperately hoping that this stream works. So the plan is I'm just going to go through things as quickly as possible, because I know that if the stream goes down, it goes down bad. So I'm going to scroll up to the top and let's get started on the questions. I just hope that all of you are doing okay. And yeah, let's give this a go. Let's hope this holds out this time. So, first question, is it okay to be a witch as a child? Now, I'm not going to put this person's specific age because I don't want to share that, but generally speaking, it's a difficult one for me to answer for everyone. Do you know what I mean? Because it's a very personal thing. I started witchcraft when I was really young, and so I find that you can very successfully be a witch if you are a young person. You just have to make sure that you have the understanding of what you're getting into. And honestly, I think that's probably the main point of contention here, is you need to make sure that you're able to understand what it is that you're doing, and to be able to have the safety precautions and the understanding of the hazards going into it. And so It's perfectly fine for you to be a magical practitioner, however you refer to yourself as a young person, as long as you know the potential dangers and you know how to get yourself out of it. And ideally, you have some adult figure in your life that's able to point you in the right direction of things that are safe and things that are not safe. So it's really a personal thing, but as long as you have that understanding, you can successfully practice. It's just a case of whether you choose not to or choose to. I've got a song in my head. I should not have music playing just before the stream because I get it stuck in my head forever. So the next one is, do you have to have crystals to be a witch? And the answer is very simply, not at all. Crystals are one thing that can be used within magical practice. Crystals have their own energetic connections that people will make to them. They have their own associations and correspondences that can be incorporated into witchcraft if you would like to. And I use the crystals that I have within my magical practice. A lot of people will also use them in therapies and in healings, but you definitely don't need them in order to practice witchcraft. So much like anything else, any other tool that you're using, it's a tool. It isn't where the energy solely comes from. So if you want to use crystals, you can. If you don't want to use crystals, you don't have to. It's really all personal. If you are just getting started, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting loads of crystals anyway. I'd start with just something as simple as quartz. You can even get quartz in garden centers because it's often used within gravel, and try using that. Now, you don't even have to use anything fancy like quartz. You can just use rocks that you find around as a way of collecting the energy from the earth if you wanted to. So there's lots of options out there, but you definitely don't need to have a huge collection to be a practitioner of any kind, unless you specifically want to practice crystal magic. Then obviously you're going to need crystals to practice crystal magic, but you don't have to practice crystal magic to be a witch. That was a lot of words. I hope they all made sense, and I hope they all came out in the right order. Because I swear, sometimes I say a whole bunch of words and they come out in a random order, and it could mean anything, honestly. Right. People from everywhere: Florida, Oregon, Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Scotland, yes, Somerset, yay! Love a bit of Somerset. It is uncharacteristically warm in the UK, you're right. I woke up this morning thinking it was going to be freezing because it has for like the rest of the week, and then it's been boiling hot, and, well, not boiling hot, but it's been like uncharacteristically warm for April in England. So I was going to wear my merch today. I decided I was going to wear the sweatshirt on the stream, and then I got the temperature and I was like, yeah, no. No chance am I going to be wearing the sweatshirt in the stream today. You remind me of Elena from the Vampire Diaries. I will take that as a compliment. I really like Elena. It's a bit of a controversial opinion. Lots of people hate Elena. I really like Elena practically all the way through. I know that some people are going to hate me for that, but I like Elena, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. How do you make sure that it's a deity you're interacting with and not a trickster spirit? So this is an interesting one, and it's actually relatively difficult to answer because spirits are able to lie, and a lot of spirits will lie very freely. And so it's quite difficult to know. So you have to look for other signs. Don't just believe the things they say, believe the things they do. That's really my basis for knowing the intention of spirits anyway, because although spirits can lie, a lot of the time they don't necessarily know everything they would need to know to lie successfully. So this is why I always say, if you want to work with deities, make sure that you research their mythology, make sure you look into their studies, their stories, make sure you focus on them and the things that represent them, and also hear other people's experiences with interacting with said deity, because it gives you an idea of how the interactions might go. And yes, every person is going to have a slightly different interaction with a deity, but there are definitely repetition threads, but like repeated threads that go between different interactions. So if you are wanting to work, say, with Ceridwen, and a deity, a believed deity, is telling you information, for instance, but then they start behaving completely uncharacteristic for how Ceridwen behaves around other people, the way Ceridwen behaves in mythology and stories and the Mabinogi, then you start to question, hang on a minute, if I am the only one that's having an experience this odd, is it because Ceridwen is suddenly acting differently, or is it because it's something pretending to be the deity? And that's really the way I work it, because spirits can lie quite effectively, but spirits, not all spirits know all information, you're just like people. So you'll often find that there are things that they don't know about said deities, that if you make sure that you do your research beforehand, you will be able to pick up on it. And generally speaking, if you're finding lots of things are not adding up, that it's not feeling quite right, then that could be a good idea just to take a step back and figure out what's going on. Because typically, if a spirit is messing with you, they will get bored pretty easily. So if you take a step back and you don't interact with them for a while, they're likely to get bored and move on to bothering someone else. But if a deity wants to connect with you and you want to connect with that deity, no matter how long an expanse of time you leave, they will be present to connect with you when you want to connect with them. So that's another way of doing it, kind of the faking them out a little bit, because if you wait long enough, they will get bored if it is a trickster spirit, because they love tricking and causing mischief. And if you aren't playing into it, then they're going to get bored and they're going to move on to someone else. So it is a tricky one. It definitely takes some practice to figure it out. But generally, if something feels off, take a step back and reevaluate, because it may well be that it is off. It jumped again. No! I've only just started and it's already bink straight down to the bottom. So I'm gonna fill. Yes, and is. Yay! I'm so sorry. I didn't notice anyone. I have a bit hyperactive today. And this didn't come through either. I am so sorry, Eureka. I did not see that come up. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And a shout out to everyone in the stream, by the way, and just everyone on my channel in general. Thank you so much for supporting me. Even if you don't give donations, of course, donations are always appreciated because it helps me pay for new equipment and things like that. Even just watching and liking the videos and commenting on them and subscribing to the channel, that makes the world of difference, and it means so much to me that you're willing to sit here and listen to me talk for hours on end. So massive thank you to everyone who supports the channel in even the smallest way. It really means a lot to me. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back up now, otherwise I'm gonna lose the top of the chat again, and I don't want to lose the top of the chat again. I don't even know where I was. I was somewhere around here. In a lot of rituals where they call in the quarters, they also call in the watchtowers. I'm a little confused as to exactly what the watchtowers are supposed to be. So, as far as I'm aware, what the watchtowers are used primarily in the circle casting rituals of the Wiccan religion. So, of course, as an ex-Wiccan, I can't really speak in depth about the many different Wiccan traditions that might use the watchtowers, but they are kind of like protective figures of the quarters. So you call in the quarters, and by calling in the quarters, you are calling in the watchtowers, which are like watchful figures. At least this is how it was explained to me. Now, obviously, my experience within Wicca is going to be different from other people's, and also the type of Wiccan environment I was in was more traditional British Wicca, which is going to be different to many other forms of Wicca. But it's usually kind of mixed together with the quarters as to be like watchful figures that you can call upon in your workings. Now, if you are not Wiccan, you do not need to be calling in the quarters or the watchtowers if you don't want to. I have found that in the rituals that I was a part of as a Wiccan, the quarters and the watchtowers, the terms were used interchangeably by different people. So one person who was opening that circle would call in the quarters, and a different person on a different day would call in the watchtowers. So I'll be interested to know if anyone else has any experience with this in the chat, but I have found them to be used almost interchangeably. It's a little strange, so I think it's a quite a Wiccan thing. So if you're not Wiccan, you don't need to be calling in the quarters and the watchtowers unless you want to. How is your current relationship with your deities going? Really well, actually. I remade my Bridget altar, which I believe was on my Patreon. I think that video was on my Patreon. And since then, I've had the candles going. I've had lots of health problems over the last few months, and Bridget has been massively helping me with that. If I really need assistance, will use candles with Bridget oil on them, and I'll also use Bridget incense as well to help on that. And there was a period of time, there was about a month where I was doing 2 candles on both of my altars. So I have my Bridget altar in here, and then I have my manifestation altar in the other room, which is the one that you see me set up the most. And I was doing 2 candles on each per day, and then I whittled it down to just 2 on my main altar in that room behind me. And I was doing that for a while. And now when I need extra assistance with the health problems, I will continue to burn things on that altar, mainly because I don't sit in here all that often. And then I've also had more interaction with Kronos than I have in a long while. And it seems like at this moment in my life, certain deities are more at the forefront and others are more in the background. And then over time, they kind of cycle around. So yeah, that's currently what's happening, and really liking it so far. So many people are scared of mirrors lately. Is it really dangerous to have a mirror facing your bed or 2 mirrors facing each other? It isn't really dangerous. I have found so many posts on Instagram that have been reposted from TikTok that are talking about how, you know, you're in for some bad shit if you have mirrors facing your bed. You aren't. You really aren't. Now, it's important to preface this by saying certain religious and spiritual traditions believe that 2 mirrors facing one another creates a portal. That is a very specific religious, spiritual belief that not everyone is going to have. I have personally never experienced a difference when you have 2 mirrors facing one another versus having 1 mirror. That is based on my experiences, and obviously with all of this, I can only speak from my own experiences. Now, mirrors themselves can act as portals. And so I have had many experiences of seeing spirits in mirrors that are not present in the room. And that is why I lock the majority of my mirrors if I'm not choosing to actively use them. And there will be a full video. I'm determined to do a full video on locking mirrors. Now, the idea of locking a mirror is you essentially make it a one-way street. You can look into a mirror, but nothing can look back again. So it stops things from coming and going. Now, some people will say that if you have a mirror facing your bed when you sleep, spirits can interact with you during your sleep and they can mess with you and give you nightmares and the like. I have had a mirror facing my bed every year of my life since I was a child. And I have never had any worse experience sleeping with a mirror near me versus sleeping without a mirror near me. Besides one occasion. Now, the one occasion wasn't necessarily due to the mirror, it was due to circumstances. So it really is a case of, can they cause issues? Yeah, in some occasions they can. Is it something that you should be scared of? No, especially when it comes to spirits, because if you are scared, you are fueling them with that energy, and that's only going to make the situation 10 times worse. So if you do have a mirror in your room, or a mirror in your space, I would look up locking the mirror. Now, I personally lock my mirror with blessed oil and sigils of protection, and that is how I lock my mirrors. And I just draw a little symbol in the top right-hand corner, usually, of the mirror as a way of making it a one-way street. If you're really concerned, you can do that. But I have only done that in the last maybe year. Before that point, I never had any problems. So it's a case of, be cautious, not scared. Because once you're scared, you then start to think irrationally. When you're scared, you start manifesting things that you wouldn't have manifested otherwise. I have talked to a witch and she told me that there's no danger while doing astral projection. Is that true? I've never found there to be much danger when astral projecting. The majority of people I've spoken to who are scared of astral projection think that you can get stuck in the astral plane. I have never known of or heard of anyone getting stuck in the astral plane because it's so tricky to maintain astral projection. Any slight bump, bang, scare, fright, whatever it might be, you are just back in your body again. And it's really hard to maintain astral projection if you do get startled. And so you're never going to get stuck in the astral plane. At least I have never experienced getting stuck in the astral plane. No one I've ever spoken to within the magical community has experienced getting stuck in the astral plane. Does that mean it never happens? No, because I can't speak of whether it has or hasn't to anyone around the world. It's definitely not a problem like a lot of people on Tumblr used to say it was. If you remember the good old Tumblr days of Witchcraft Tumblr, they used to be really freaked out by it. Never once have I ever experienced it. Now, I have found that there aren't many physical dangers in the astral plane. There are, however, psychological things that can happen in the astral plane. So, for instance, I have been killed in the astral plane. I am still alive right here. Was it an eye-opening experience that changed my perspective on the world? Yes. And so in some cases, people would say that that is dangerous because it causes a psychological change. So as with everything, it has the potential to be hazardous. And as with the mirrors, it's important to note, be cautious, don't be scared. Go in with your protections. Always, I would recommend have protections. If you are worried about being stuck there, give yourself a physical tether. You can literally charge a piece of string and tie it to your ankle and then tie your ankle to the bedpost if that's what you really want to make you feel secure. There's lots of options out there, but generally speaking, I have found there's no real physical harm that can come to you in the astral plane. It's mostly spiritual, psychic, which is why I recommend having protections on. And I have a full video on how to identify astral projection versus dreams, which has some more information in it that I'm not going to give you right now because it's in a full video. Whew. Wow. Words. What is the difference between ritual and ceremony? So this is one that's actually really common because a lot of people do get the two confused. And I am going to be basing this solely off my own understanding of them. So a ceremony is something that has been done time and time and time again. So it is a repetition of set actions at set times on set days that is often used collectively. So there are many traditions out there that have ceremonies that are a part of them. So for instance, an initiation ceremony within Wicca is done the same way by the same people using the same tools on the same day every time it's being done by that particular coven, or even in many cases by that particular form of Wicca. So for instance, traditional British Wicca has pretty much the same ceremony, the initiation ceremony, that is done between covens because it's all part of the same tradition. Whereas a ritual is a set series of things that get taken place, but it's more of an individual basis. Now, obviously, this is my own definition based on the people I know and their experiences. So for me, I find that ceremonies are kind of collective knowledge that's shared among people, so everyone from different places will do the same thing, whereas you can have a ritual. It is just something that you've done again and again and again, but it's yours. So it's something that you might have created, but you will do it every full moon or every new moon or, however often you want to do that. Whereas a ceremony is often something that is shared collectively among different groups of people who then do it as you would a ritual. It's kind of complicated, honestly, and where the lines get drawn is going to depend on your tradition as well. So different traditions will refer to ceremonies and rituals as being very different things, and then you have other traditions that will refer to spells and rituals as being the same thing, but they aren't necessarily the same thing because if you aren't repeating the spell multiple times, it doesn't become a ritual. It's a lot, honestly, and it's part of the complexness of witchcraft is that because there are so many different ways of doing things, there are so many traditions that fall under the umbrella term of witchcraft that what I say might be very different to how someone else feels if they are part of a very different tradition than I am. So it gets a little bit complicated. How are you feeling, Hearth? Today, I am feeling great. I am bouncing off the walls. It is sunny. It is getting warmer. I'm hyper today. So yeah, today is a good day. It's a very good day. Can you be a witch and a Christian at the same time, looking at the perspectives of the beliefs of a witch? Well, here's the thing. What do witches believe in? And the answer to that is a huge range, because witchcraft covers a whole range of different magical traditions. It's an umbrella term. So there are many witches who believe different things. And there are many Christians who believe slightly different things, depending on how close to the word different people will take the Bible and its teachings. And different forms of Christianity will have their own specific, unique traits that are not found in all of them. So it's an entirely personal thing. There are many people who believe that the Bible is the biggest spellbook and the oldest spellbook in the world, whereas there are others who would not consider the Bible to be a spellbook at all. And so it's a case of each individual being able to make their own decision on how they feel in relation to their religion. And looking at it from a folk tradition practice perspective, which is what I primarily focus on. I'm fascinated by the history of witchcraft in Europe. We see that witchcraft wasn't wiped out because the practitioners of it adapted to the religion at the time, which was Christianity. And so most of the folk charms that are found within the early modern period actually have a great deal of Christian faith within the folk charms, because to survive, Christianity and witchcraft ended up kind of merging together into its own unique thing. So I think it's entirely personal on the practitioner, and as long as the practitioner feels comfortable with what they're doing, then it's not really up to anyone else to say that they can't do it. There are many Christian witches out there who are just as valid and just as successful in their magical practice as a pagan witch or as an atheist witch, whatever you might choose to be. So yeah, it's much like everything within witchcraft. It's super duper personal. And my practice is going to be very different to the next witch's practice. It's completely personal to each of us. Sorry, I've realised I can't talk and read at the same time. Let me see. I have struggled with being called naive for believing in witchcraft and don't want to be compared to the nonsense, stoic exploitation beliefs. What can I do? Here's my question, right? Now, don't take this the wrong way, okay? This is just like a genuine question just to ask yourself, and anyone can ask themselves this, is why does it matter what anyone else calls you? Because ultimately, if someone else thinks you're naive, that's their problem. That's not your problem. If you're comfortable with your practice, if you're comfortable with your beliefs, if you enjoy what you're doing, it really doesn't matter what the next person says. Because if their beliefs don't align with yours, that's okay. It's not your problem if they feel the need to tell you that you're being naive. If anything, that's a them problem, because they feel insecure about their own beliefs, so they feel the need to attack you for yours. And I've been doing this for a long time, and I have gotten called anything under the sun. The internet is an unruly place. But ultimately, I'm the only person who can control how I feel about my practice. And so you kind of just have to let it go, because there's no way to convince them, and you shouldn't have to convince them. It's not your job to convince them. So genuinely, I would just say, keep doing you, keep going on your path, and they will say whatever they want to say regardless. And that's a them problem. That's not a you problem. Do you have to cast a circle for every working or spell casting? Not at all. So circle casting can be incredibly useful. It's a really wonderful technique to train your energy manipulation, your visualization skills. It's really good for training it. And it's also really good for offering spiritual, psychic, and energetic protection during spellwork and ritual, as well as divination readings. It's also really good for maintaining the energy in that space. So the idea being that you cast a circle, you raise the energy, you do the spellwork, you drop the circle. That way the energy is released all in one go instead of like piddling out in little bits and pieces. Some people find their workings to be far more successful in a circle, other people don't. It really is a case of trial and erroring your way through it. I would say though, if you aren't going to use a circle, make sure you have some form of personal protection, because there are spirits and energies around that might want to impact you or the working, but you don't have to cast a circle every time. I will cast circles on more ritualistic practices. So I don't cast a circle for standard spell work, I don't cast a circle for working on my altar, and I don't cast a circle for divination readings. But if I am doing a ritualized area, if I'm creating a ritualized space for a working, then I will do a circle casting so that I can maintain the energy for longer periods of time. That's just what works for me. So I'd recommend, if you aren't sure which one you prefer, that you try both ways and see what you like, because some people really like the vibraty energy that's around them with a circle. Other people really don't like that. So trial and error. You don't have to cast a circle though if you don't want to. It's just whatever you prefer. I've been holding this glass for like 10 minutes. I need to just drink from it and then put it down. That's what I need to do. I saw you were reading the new Welsh Magic book. When you get done, will you please give us a review? Yeah, so it will be in my quarterly book breakdown video. There's already 2 on my channel already. To spot them, there's usually a picture of a book on the screen. I think it's also, I have a playlist for them as well, for the previous book breakdowns. Every 3 months, I run through my review of the books that I've started, finished, and sort of read in that quarter. And when I do that, it just allows me to cover lots of books on lots of different topics all in one go, instead of having to split it up. So the Welsh Magic book will be in my next quarterly book breakdown. I haven't finished it yet. So far, pretty good. Lots of repetition though, like so much repetition. I feel like you could cut like a whole section out of the book and it would read the same. Just bear that in mind if you do get it. So much repetition. But so far, it's a pretty good book. It will be in my quarterly book breakdown. What do you think about mixing different traditions, for example, Egyptian and Celtic? Do you think that works? I find it difficult because there's always something is lost. How do you see it? I think that mixing traditions is okay as long as you have a reason to mix those traditions, if that makes sense. So if you have no connection to Egypt, to the land, to the place, to the people, it can be a little bit tricky to mix them, and it leads to the question of whether you should mix them if you don't have any connection to the place, the culture, the people. Do you know what I mean? So I think if you as an individual are part of 2 distinctive cultures, traditions, then mixing them can work really well. But if you aren't, then it can get tricky, and you can run the line of whether it's something you should be doing or you shouldn't be doing. So it's a really tricky one. I can't really speak on it too much, but yeah, it will once again be whether it's appropriate for you to do based on who you are as an individual. Are you going to do some vlogs since it's warm outside? I will be. I get really nervous doing the vlogs. I've actually filmed 2 vlogs, edited them both, and then never posted them. So I don't know if you still want to see them. They're from the start of March. It's now nearly May. But yeah, I would like to do vlogs. I'm hoping to get back into hiking again and get back into traveling again. And so I'd love to do some more like Glastonbury style vlogs. If you haven't seen the video, it's on the channel. That's from last July. And I loved those style of vlogs because I like being able to show you places in the UK that maybe some people wouldn't be able to visit and see. So I like the idea of doing it. It's just a whole thing. When you see people vlog, and you see them like walk away from the camera, just remember that they have to turn around, walk all the way back again to grab the camera, and then walk the way they just went. It takes so long to vlog anything. So I'm hoping to do some. I haven't got around to doing any yet. Any interesting ones anyway. I often feel like I don't belong in this community since it seems so many witches are female and young. Anyway, can being a witch make you sick? Okay, firstly, the problem we have is that social media is often the forefront of the practitioners within magical practice, the same as it's the forefront of the beauty community or the camping community. You know, like the people that are on social media are the people who are perceived as being the standard. And they really aren't. Most people I've ever met within the witchcraft community are in their mid-40s to their late 80s. You know, that's kind of the demographic. And they're males, they're females, they're non-binaries. It doesn't really matter. And it's only really social media where we see a huge increase in young women. And I think that is sadly just the algorithm likes to focus on young-ish women and really pushes it because it's aesthetic, it's appealing to teenage girls, you know, it's popular. So I just want to say here that generally speaking, for anyone that's worried about not fitting into this little box, you really don't need to worry about it, because out there are thousands of magical practitioners who don't fit into that box. There are far more practitioners who don't than practitioners who do. And some of the most amazing practitioners I've ever had the pleasure of meeting have been mature people, i.e. not teenagers, full-grown adults, and they are men, they are older women, they are non-binary. Like, there are so many people out there that don't fit into that little tiny box, and social media can make it seem like the little tiny box is the standard, and it really isn't. In regards to whether being a witch can make you sick, being a witch itself cannot make you sick. However, there are obviously things that can interact with you negatively that you might have called upon, you might have worked with, or you might have attracted with spellwork rituals that have the potential to cause you harm, which is why I always recommend protections 24/7. Doesn't matter what you're doing, doesn't matter if you're in the swimming pool, doesn't matter if you're at the gym, it doesn't matter if you're cooking. Protections always, because it's far better to have the protections in place than to end up having to deal with a whole bunch of shit afterwards. So yeah, wow. My voice just broke again. So the act of witchcraft isn't going to make anyone sick, but as with everything, you have the potential of picking things up along the way that might cause harm. So I would always recommend protections and regular cleanses is in some form, just to kind of get rid of any of the unwanted things that attach onto you. And yeah, that's generally how I deal with it and how a lot of people deal with it. It just makes it easier just to make sure you have the protections on permanently. Some people don't like blanket protections. I really like blanket protections because it just means you have a whole lot less to deal with after the fact. Are fairies and elementals basically the same thing? Not in the slightest, no. And they will be very angry if you say that to their face. No. There are certain fae who may in some way have characteristics that are similar to elementals. So for instance, the sylphs of the air element are often depicted as being floaty, light, with wings, and so a lot of people will associate them with fae. Now, if anyone has had any direct interactions with the fae, you will know that most of them do not have cute little fairy wings. Most of them are not like that at all. And I think a lot of people get the two mixed up because there are certain fae who have similar physical characteristics to elementals. So for instance, there are fae that like residing in fiery locations, and there are elementals, salamanders, I believe, salamanders, who also enjoy fiery environments, and they might have similar traits. They will not appreciate being considered the same thing, especially the fae. I would not recommend calling a fae an elemental. That's a really bad idea. Not a good idea. So I think it's more a case of similarities, and the lines can get blurred when there are a lot of similarities between particular individuals. But it's important to remember that the fae is a huge classification. It's the equivalent of fish. It covers a huge range of spirits, that some can be very tall and beautiful, some can be really small and ugly. They have exceptionally different traits. So there are many fae who don't resemble elementals in the slightest in any way, because they're just very, very different beings. What were you listening to before the live stream? I was listening to Falling in Reverse. It just came up on my Spotify one day and I just started listening to it, and now I'm stuck. It's just become my new obsession. I'm trying to practice witchcraft and paganism, but I suck at actually being consistent. I'm surprised Eris hasn't smited me yet. I wouldn't worry too much about it, because the thing is, ultimately, it's about, especially if you're working with deities, in my experience, it's about willing. It's about being willing to do it when you can, being able to being willing to do it when you have the means to do it. The only time I found that deities get particularly annoyed or spirits get particularly annoyed is when you disappear when things are good and then you turn up and demand help when things get bad. There definitely has to be that level of respect there when you might say pull away from your craft a little bit when you have other things going on in your life, but you make it clear that you aren't abandoning them, that things are just difficult right now, you're going to be coming back to it again. The only time I've ever found it be a problem is when people demand things when their life gets shit and then they vanish without a trace when their life gets good, because that's just not great. And they can often take it the wrong way, especially if you don't explain what you're doing or how you feel to them. So I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Lots of people have fluctuations in their life, especially if you've got a lot going on. You know, if you're working a job and you have children and you have pets and things are going on in your life, it's completely understandable that you're not going to be that consistent. And actually, consistency is a luxury that not everyone has. So most people, well, most spirits and most deities will be pretty okay with it. And I would have a conversation with it. Just share the information, talk to yourself, talk out loud if you need to, just to share that information with them. What are your thoughts on sleep paralysis and the beings watching you sleep? So this is an interesting one. Now, I have spent a lot of time with people with sleep paralysis. I have had sleep paralysis. It's a really scary, unnerving thing. But as someone who both works with spirits and has had sleep paralysis is very different to interacting with spirits. It feels different, they act differently, it doesn't look the same. And I can very clearly define where sleep paralysis is and where spirit work is. Because the beings that are witnessed in sleep paralysis, to me anyway, as a practitioner, they don't feel like spirits. They don't feel real. And we know scientifically that sleep paralysis is that time when your body and your mind are part in, part out of sleep. So the things that we dream about are still dreams. It's just that because we are partially awake, we see them in the physical world as though they're real. But in my experience, none of the beings I've ever seen in sleep paralysis feel, act, or look like any kind of spirit I've ever dealt with. So for me, I tend to have this strong distinction between the two, because usually I can tell the difference pretty quickly, because obviously spirits have their own autonomy. They're doing their own thing, regardless of you. Whereas I have found that sleep paralysis, the things that you see in sleep paralysis is entirely controlled by your mind, because it's a creation of, instead of an external factor that's influencing you. But I can completely understand why people get really freaked out by sleep paralysis, especially in communities where spirit and spirit work is a very scary thing. Yeah, I can see why people would get really scared. I have a loading screen. Okay, it's gone. For a minute, I thought something had already gone wrong. Okay. Whew. Where does the idea of trickster spirits come from? I mean, I don't think it comes from spirits being kind of tricky. Like, they don't really have like an origin. It's like a personality trait. Like, some spirits just kind of want to screw you over. And that's like their personality, is they just want to mess with you. And then the term trickster spirit kind of got added onto them after the fact. How do you know if you are using or manipulating energy rather than just thinking you are? How do you know you've directed your energy when you've cast a circle correctly? For me, I know it because it feels very different. So it's obviously going to feel different for everyone. But when I'm casting a circle, everything goes dead. Like, it's a very strange sensation. So the room maybe has a breeze going through it, and there's outside noise from the traffic or from people or from the wind. And I cast a circle and it goes deathly still. Like, not a breath of wind in the space. And all the noise has gone kind of weird and muted, and I kind of can't hear it the same anymore. And then when you drop the circle, the breeze comes back in again, and the noise comes back in again. And it's a very strange thing that I noticed a while back, where there seems to be this shift that happens when you cast a circle and the energy is remaining in that space. And it really is a case of figuring out what that is for you. Because for me, energy feels heavy. So if I'm holding an item that has very strong energy in it, my arm feels dead. Like it feels like a dead weight. Whereas for other people, it feels hot, or it feels cold, or it feels tingly. For me, things feel heavy. And so how I perceive energy is going to be different to how other people perceive it. So I trial and error it, see what's different when you cast a circle. Try it again and again and again to see if there's a way of doing it that makes something change. And really, I only figured that out through trial and error for a very long time. And then the other way of doing it is to work with a person. And I know that not everyone is going to have the ability to do this, but if you can find someone who's willing to do this with you, that would be amazing. I did this in a group environment. There were quite a lot of us, and I've spoken about it before, but I will touch on it briefly again, where you work in pairs. Now, you don't have to work in pairs, but it's easier to work in pairs. One person is sitting on a chair facing away from the person that's standing behind them. The person that's standing behind them is going to center, ground, bring up that energy. They're then going to focus on either hot or cold. So they could either visualize a volcano, or they could visualize a polar ice cap or something. And you're thinking that through, and you're adding that feeling of cold, of bitter cold or boiling hot into the energy. And then you're going to be pushing it into the space around the person that's standing in front of you or sitting in front of you. That person then senses the energy, pushes out some of their energy, draws it back in again so they can figure out the energy that's going on around them, and they then say whether they think it's hot or cold. And this is a great way, one, of training energy manipulation full stop, but also of training energy sensing. And then after 6 goes, you switch around. And it's a really good way of trying to figure out your energy sensing, your energy manipulation. And it's a really good way, especially if you're working with someone that's really good at energy sensing, of figuring out whether or not you are adding and manipulating your energy effectively. Because if the person that's in front of you is usually really good at energy sensing, and all of a sudden they're finding it so difficult, that's probably because you are not projecting your energy effectively, or you aren't attaching your intention onto it in the best way. And then you can just try it again, and again. Now, obviously, this isn't ideal if you don't have people to try this with, but if you are fortunate enough to have people to do this with, I would thoroughly recommend giving it a go. It is something that I have been doing for a long time. I was taught it in a group setting, and it was so eye-opening because it was a way to tangibly practice energy sensing and energy manipulation in a way that was easy for lots of people to wrap their head around. It was really good. What are your favorite protection workings? So I actually have a video that I'm working on about protection jewelry, which is going to be coming out in the next few months, hopefully. And I will be doing other protection style workings going forwards. Some of my favorite though for home protection are the Rowan charms. I'm pointing over here like you can see it. I have a Rowan charm on the back of my door. I don't think I'll be able to grab it, but I have a video on it on my channel about making Rowan charm protection charms. Rowan protection charms. And that's one of my favorite ways of doing that, and also protection jewelry. So I have one video out already. I also have a protection candle spell which is on my channel already, and then there is going to be a protection jewelry video coming out soonish. Do you have any plans to do an in-depth video on magical batteries? Yes, I'm gathering resources because ideally I don't just... My experience with magical batteries is a personal experience. It's a personal experience of working with myself and working with other magical practitioners to develop what I refer to as a magical battery. In order to do a video on it, I want reliable resources that I can share with you that aren't just, well, I did it and it works, therefore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I want resources that people can look at for more information so that they can know what I'm talking about. And I've so far found one book that talks about magical batteries, so I'm going to finish that book. and hopefully that will go on the list. And then I'm going to try really hard to find a few more so that I can get it all on the list, hopefully, because I don't just want it to be like well, I did it, therefore it works for everyone, because that's not really how this works. It's something that I have found exceptionally effective. Does it mean that I am the most knowledgeable person imaginable? No, it doesn't. So I really want to find other resources first before I make a video on it, just so I've got some references to put in, so that you have more to learn about, because everyone loves a good book recommendation. At least I like a good book recommendation. Do tarot, Ouija, and spirit communication fall under the term witchcraft? No, they don't. So, spirit work and divination are not witchcraft. They can be included into witchcraft, but you don't have to be a witch in order to do them. So there are many people who work with tarot cards, oracle cards, pendulums, runes, Ogham, everything out there. They are diviners, they are fortune tellers, whatever it is the term that they like to use for themselves. They don't have to practice witchcraft. They can, but they don't have to. Just as if you practice witchcraft, you don't have to have tarot cards, you don't have to do divination readings. You also don't have to work with spirits. So there's kind of three different sections. There are the oracles, the people who like to answer questions, the psychics, the people who can connect with spirits in the form of mediumship or through tools, and then there are the witches. And these three things can be used together if you would like them to, but they don't have to be. So not all people who are psychic are going to be witches, or would even want to be witches, and not all people who are witches are going to be psychic. So they're kind of three things that can be worked with together, but unfortunately on social media, everything now is getting pulled into witchcraft. Like, it's like just this black hole that's being sucked together, when in reality, lots of the practices that are considered witchcraft on social media are technically not witchcraft at all. They're their own unique traditions and practices. It's just the social media black hole has just kind of sucked in all of these traditions and called it witchcraft, which makes it really difficult, especially if you are just getting into it, to figure out what is and what isn't witchcraft. Do you have any book recommendations for not magic? I do, but I don't know where the book is. I don't know where the book is. Where is it? It's orange. This isn't helpful to you. I know. It's orange and I can't find it. I don't know. I might have to do a video on not magic. I don't know what it's called. I'm so sorry. I don't know what it's called off the top of my head. It's a great book. It's orange. That doesn't help anyone. It's orange and it has some chilies on the front of the cover. You can I'm a visual person. I'm not a wordy person. I say this, but I talk so much. I will have to find it, reread it, and put it in my quarterly book breakdown. That is what I'm going to have to do, because I actually don't know where it is. Does anyone else do that when they just put down a book and then they lose it forever? Do you sing in any ritual you do? I do, yeah. There are I got into it actually when I was working in a coven environment, is that we would have set songs that we would put on for specific types of rituals and for specific seasons. And especially when you're getting into trance and you're raising a lot of energy with a large group of people, it's really useful to have a song in the background that most people will know. And if you don't know it, it has a few words that you can just repeat again and again and again. Because one of the easiest ways to enter into trance is to repeat the same thing over and over and over again until it becomes just this nonsensical blur of noise. And so some really good ones are Earth, Air, Fire, and Water. It's really easy to remember the lyrics. There's about 9 words in the entire song, and it's really good for entering into trance. So there's a few. There's earth, air, fire and water, blessings. I have an entire playlist. It's on my channel. If you go into the playlist section and you look at ritual music, it's a saved playlist of all the ritual music that I have and do listen to. And there are several in there that I know every word to, and I will use it in a ritual environment to enter into a trance-like state. So that's primarily what I sing and use music for when it comes to witchcraft. I don't often have the song on because autoplay exists, and especially when you're working with energy, I tend to find that it does random things. So if I have music playing during a ritual, guarantee it will do some weird things like glitch, or the volume will change, or it will skip songs, or it will pause. So I just like making the music myself, because if I make it myself, then if I want it to stop, it will just stop. If I want it to start, I will just start again. So I find that incredibly useful. What's your favorite sort of video to make? The vlogs. I'll be honest, the vlogs are hands down my favorite to make. I have a few that range from like favorites to hate it. Like my least favorite videos to make are the podcast videos, because they are so information focused and my memory is like a sieve. So I have to repeat myself maybe like 50 times for every sentence, because I will forget a word or I will forget a date. I actually just filmed season 2 episode 1 and it took me maybe like 2 hours to film it. It's like a 20-minute episode and it took me 2 hours to film it because I kept making mistakes. Another video I don't like making very much are the altar setup videos, because my living area is quite dark and it's really hard to get the lighting right. But the vlogs, I love the vlogs. One, I get to be out in a place I love, and I get to do voiceovers. Like the burnout video was so much fun to make. So those kind of videos are my favorite to make and to edit, because it's not just me sat in the same space for 2.5 hours. The elements I'm studying, is it somewhere connected to zodiacs and stuff? I don't entirely know the question, but there is a belief that if you fall into a specific astrological sign, you are more connected to a certain element. So for instance, if you are a Cancer sign like I am meant to be more connected to the water element. If you are Virgo, you're meant to be more closely connected with the earth element. But in reality, that's not how it actually works. And for instance, I'm a water element, and yet I love water, but I love working with fire. Fire is my go-to element for working with. It always has been. Love it. Whereas there are lots of people who are air elements who connect more closely with the earth element. So there is a belief that if you fall into a specific astrological sign or zodiac sign, that you can only work with the element of your sign. It's not true. It really isn't true. You can work with all elements, because all elements are a part of you, and you are a part of an earth that is full of the different elements. It's just about what you connect with more strongly. And if you connect, say, with the water element, that doesn't mean you can't work with anything else. That just means it might take a little bit more effort to be able to work with everything else, because it isn't the thing that you're directly connected to. I've got really bad hay fever today, by the way, and I forgot to take my hay fever tablet till about an hour ago, so you'll have to excuse if my voice changes thousands of times in this video. I'm nearly out of water in my goblet as well. I'm going to have to switch to my mug. Any tips for lucid dreaming? The main tip I have, I say it in every video, I apologise to anyone who's heard me say this 1,000 times, but dream journal. Like Shark Boy and Lava Girl, we're going to be making a dream journal. So every morning when you wake up, write down everything you remember. It doesn't matter if it's vague, if it's nonsensical, if it makes no sense whatsoever. Write down any colours, any sights, any sounds, anything that you saw, any conversations that you had. At the very start, it might just be there were clouds or red, and that's all you remember. But over time, it's going to develop further and further and further. And essentially, the goal here is every morning we write down our dreams. It forces our brain to remember them and to be aware of them. And once you're aware of something, you can control it. And the more you document the things that you're experiencing in your dreams, you will notice that as you're in your dreams, you're suddenly way more aware than you were before, and then you can start altering and editing things. And this is really useful if you do struggle with dreams, if you just want to learn more, if you want to do dream magic, or in my experience, if you get nightmares. A nightmare is far less scary if you can change it and make it happy, which is a really effective tool that I have used for a long time. Dream journals. They sound stupid. I know they sound stupid, but they're really good. If you don't want to have a notebook by your bed, do what I do. I use my notes app on my phone and I dictate into them. I just speak into my microphone. And that way I can use the word to text feature, so I don't even have to open my eyes. I can just talk with my eyes closed to note it all down, and then it's sorted. You've stored that information away, and that way you're slowly going to start recognizing when you're in dreams and being able to process them actively and be able to be present in them instead of a bystander to them, which is such a great step. What are your thoughts on Ouija boards? Once again, I've answered this many times before. I'll make it really quick. A Ouija board is no scarier than anything else. Ouija boards get a bad reputation because of movies, because of TV shows, because of fear-mongering, because of TikTok. They get such a bad reputation. The reality is a Ouija board is no more dangerous than using a pendulum if you are trying to communicate with spirits. Any tool that you use to communicate with spirits has the potential to be harmful, but it also has the potential to be perfectly fine. Essentially, the problem with spirit communication when using tools is that you are inviting the spirit to physically interact with you. In the form of a Ouija board or a pendulum, you are asking the spirit to directly influence your movements, your hands. And by doing that, you have the potential to gain attachments from negative spirits. That is no different in a Ouija board than it is in an angel board, or a spirit board, or tarot cards, or pendulums. It's the exact same hazard if you're asking for a spirit to physically interact with you, regardless of the tool that you're using. Ouija boards get so much shit, they don't deserve it. End of rant. But Ouija boards get so much bad reputation when they really shouldn't. Really is no more hazardous than any other tool that you're using to communicate with spirits. How did you die in the astral plane? I was eaten alive by wolves, which actually I've realised is a pretty common thing. I've spoken to a few magical practitioners and quite a few of them have experienced the exact same thing. And it's strange. There was a book I was reading, I forget which one it was. Was it A Deed Without a Name? I think it was A Deed Without a Name. Do I have that? Oh, it's right there. I can't reach it. I think it's called A Deed Without a Name. That one goes over, I think, don't quote me on that, I'm hoping it's that one. Goes over lots of interactions that people have had in the astral plane. And one of those in the book was about being eaten alive by wolves. And I was like, damn, this is like the exact same situation. And apparently it's quite a common thing to experience depending on the type of practitioner that you are and the kind of practice that you undertake. So, yeah, it was unpleasant. I wouldn't recommend being eaten alive by wolves, astrally or physically, but it was eye-opening. Let's put it that way. What was it like being Wiccan? It was fascinating. I really enjoyed it for a long time. Bear in mind, though, that I was Wiccan for 8 years, and it was really during the time when witchcraft on social media isn't like we see it today. Witchcraft books are not the same now as they were. When I was a practicing Wiccan, everything that I was reading told me that Wicca and witchcraft were one and the same, and that in order to practice witchcraft, you had to be Wiccan. So at the very start, it was really fun and it was really enjoyable, and I enjoyed working with other practitioners. But then as time went on and I started to learn more about myself and my practice, I realized that what I was practicing didn't necessarily align with the way things are done within Wicca, and it was only after a long time that I realised that I was practicing witchcraft. That was where my passion lay, not in Wicca. And so I ended up going way back to my roots before I became Wiccan to practice the style of magic that I was doing before, which was not Wiccan in the slightest. So it was a very enjoyable experience, and I really loved being a part of it, and it was very eye-opening. But ultimately, I ended up pulling away from it more because it wasn't a fit for me. You know, it's not that the religion wasn't nice, it was not any of that. It's just that for me personally, I didn't find that it was a good fit, so I ended up moving on from it. Oh my goodness, I did not see this. Thank you so much, Sky Queen. Thank you so much. It really, really means a lot to me. I'm sorry it didn't pop up on my side, but thank you so much. Can you tell me some books on magic mirrors? See, I only have one book on magic mirrors. I can see it. Right. I'm going to try and not embarrass myself. And grab this. It's right there. It's called Magic Mirrors by Nigel. I'm just going to stand up. And get it. Let me just do this. Please don't fall off the sofa. This is my book on magic mirrors. Okay. This is my book. It is called How to Make and Use Magic Mirrors by Nigel R. Clough. Clough. C-L-O-U-G-H. Now, this is a really old book. This is from... Let me check. This is from... oh, goodness. It doesn't even say. Where is it? 1977. So I don't know if you're going to be able to get this. But this specifically talks about making traditional magic, like scrying mirrors, ritual mirrors. I'm not sure if that's what you were after when you said magic mirrors. This is the book that immediately came to mind. This one specifically talks about making ritualized mirrors using silver and gold. Ceremonial magic, but for mirrors. It's cool. It's a cool book. Was it worth nearly falling off the sofa for? Probably not. I am never going to get this back. Okay, nope, that's coming down with me. I am not risking falling off the sofa and or hurting myself in order to put that back. Okay. Right, where was I? What is your best source for finding information about witchcraft? Personal practice and other people's experiences. Now, you can gain other people's experiences from lots of different sources. You can get it from events, you can talk to people, you can have friends, you can read books. I really like books. For beginner witchcraft, I have an entire Hello? I don't know who that was. Oh, it's Facebook. Okay. So for books, I have an entire video on beginner witchcraft books that I recommend. It's a video in its own right. I really like books, especially those that have been written by long-standing magical practitioners, because it's great to see someone else's personal experience. But generally, over time, I find that the best information is through trial and error, safely, and books. Now, I do have a video, it was last week's video, all about how to develop your magical practice further without books, which could be useful which could be useful for people who don't want to read any more books. But I love books. This is not even all of them, for reference. I still have them scattered around my floor. I need to get another bookshelf. Books. Great. Words. Lost. Brain. Empty. I've got the Bewitched theme song in my head. I have it every event, like every pagan show that I do, I have the Bewitched theme song in my head, like the entire way through. I don't understand why. I don't get it. If you remember, you suggested a book on numerology a good while ago. I can't remember the name. Can you tell me which one it is? Oh, yes, it will have been The Complete Book of Numerology by David A. Phillips. Should I get it? I'm gonna fall off. One of these days I'm gonna fall off the sofa. It's called The Complete Book of Numerology by David A. Phillips, PhD. That is my favourite numerology book. It works with my brain. It makes sense with my brain. I love it. So that is the one that I typically recommend because it's the one I've had the most joy using and reading. So it was probably that one. Of all of them, it's probably that one that I recommended. What are the most powerful protection herbs in your experience? Ooh, okay. So my two favourite of all time. Now this is obviously based off my connection with the plants and where I am. So it's going to be different for everyone. But birch and nettle. Now, obviously, I live in England. Birch trees, especially silver birch trees, everywhere. Birch leaves, they are so good for protection workings. I'm not sure what this face was, but they're so good for protection workings. I love them. And I think it's because I've made such a connection to birch over the years, especially with my work with Ogham and with tree spirits. And so birch is one of my favourite trees to work with, especially for protection. I also like oak for protection for two different reasons. Birch is great for protection because it usually grows really close together and it's very difficult to get through, and so it offers kind of a protective shield both physically and energetically. Oak is a very big, strong, long-standing tree, and so it offers that safety, that rootedness that you need in protection working. So I often combine the two. And then nettles are stingy, nasty little things that grow everywhere and get in the way and make it really uncomfortable to get from A to B. So I love working with nettle in protection workings because I bring all of that energy in. But obviously nettles are really good at nurturing. They're really good for healing. So it's really good for kind of combination, protection, healing. Nettle is great. I just love working with those three in unison. They're just so good. Can you tell us about the Hare symbol in witchcraft? So, I'm assuming you're referring to the classic moon-gazing hare. And this isn't necessarily a witchcraft symbol. Obviously, it can be incorporated into witchcraft, but the moon-gazing hare is found a lot within Celtic traditions. So it's seen in the Welsh Mabinogi, it's seen in lots of Celtic traditions, and it's usually a symbol of fertility. It's a symbol of the mystic nature of the world, especially when it comes to moon-gazing hares, because the moon is also seen as a really mystical symbol. And so it's seen a lot, especially in Welsh mythology. You see hares repeating time and time and time again. And so often if you combine your religious and your spiritual practice into your witchcraft, you'll often draw that hare symbolism in. I don't know if hares are used differently within witchcraft separately. I'm not quite sure, but that's my experience with the hare symbology. It kind of gets dragged in from Celtic-ish. Celtic is kind of a weird description because it's not really a description of anything, but what I mean by this is like British, Welsh mythology. I don't know what this hand movement is, but we're going for it. Whatever that is. I'm a bit hyper today, can you tell? Okay, could you suggest books that go in depth on magic? Most go into the basics, but I want to go deeper. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Beginner witchcraft books cover a range of topics. Once you get past that stage, there are no advanced witchcraft books. Not really. There is no book that's going to cover loads of topics like beginner witchcraft books do. So once you get past the beginner witch phase, then it's time to ask, what do I want to look into? Because it's only then will you find the books that dig deeper. So if you really want to work with planetary bodies, there are in-depth witchcraft books about that. If you really want to work with hedge witchcraft, there are in-depth books about that. But once you get past that beginner phase, you then need to be looking into specifics. You need to be giving the internet, the interweb, specifics. Because it's only then when you can really deep dive into something more, because everything beyond basics is going to be individual topics. So then it really is a case of going, well, what did I enjoy when I was practicing or when I was learning about beginner witchcraft? What aspect of that did I like? Did I like the energy work? Did I like the herbal work? Did I like colours or crystals or spirits? What did I want to work with? And then it's a case of just getting a book on a specific topic and seeing if you like it. And ideally that book will have a bibliography at the back, and then you can go through the bibliography and find even more in-depth books on that specific topic, or even more specific topics that you can then dive into. And that's basically what I do. I get a lot of books from reclamation stores, like books from secondhand bookstores, charity shops, anything like that. I love getting secondhand books. But I find a lot of my newer books by going through the bibliography of older books, like newer books as in like from new books instead of secondhand books. I will go through bibliographies, and then I will see the books that I think sound interesting in the bibliography, and then I'll bounce into them as well. So you end up going super in depth on really unusual topics by just going from like one bibliography sheet to another, and then it just helps you ricochet through things. That's how I do it, because most books that you will find readily available in bookshops that you will see talked about on social media, most of them are going to be beginner books, because that is what gets the likes, that's what gets bought more often than not. It's actually quite unusual to find someone buying more than just beginner witchcraft books, because what often happens is they'll buy a beginner witchcraft book, they'll try it out, they kind of like it, but they get bored, they never do it ever again. So most of the time you won't find anything more in-depth in a bookshop, like a new bookshop. You're going to have to go elsewhere, whether that's online, whether it's secondhand stores, whether it's esoteric shops, to find something a little bit more in-depth. I love secondhand bookshops. I get the majority of my things, like this one. This one I got from, I think I got this one from Glastonbury, from a secondhand bookshop. I find so many good things from secondhand bookshops. It's well worth checking out if you want something more in-depth. Should I cast a circle when I do art? Do you need to? That is just my question. Do you need to? Because if the answer is no, then you don't need to. If you feel you want to, then do it. And it's really entirely up to what you want to do. I personally wouldn't. I don't when I create my art, because I don't need to. I'm just drawing. That is just what I use to relax. But if you are using your art within your witchcraft, then you might want to cast a circle. So it's going to be personal. Try it with, try without, see what you like most. You might find that you don't like creating art with the circle casting involved. You might find that you do. So it's not going to hurt to cast a circle. So try it, see if you like it. If you don't, then you just don't do it. Okay. Some of these ones, some of the questions I can't answer. That I'm just going down because I am not part of the tradition that involves said spirit. So there's a question here about Wendigos. I am not part of a tradition that has Wendigos as part of it. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to help on questions like that. I would recommend, if you can, especially when it comes to spirits that are connected with certain cultures and traditions and land, go to the people who are of the land, go to the people who are from that area, so that you can get a better understanding of those spirits. My understanding of the spirits only comes from what I've learned from people who do know the land and who do know the spirits. So I would say specific questions like that, I would try to find a practitioner who specifically knows of them within their own tradition, because obviously I'm not going to be able to answer it fully, and I don't think I really could do any justice or should be answering them, because I don't know enough about said spirits. So if I miss some about specific spirits, that is why. It's because I just don't feel like I'm in a suitable place to be talking about it, because I just don't know enough about it, and it's not really my place to be talking about it. So yeah, that's why I've skipped over some questions, because if I don't have a good answer, I don't feel like I should just be putting nonsense out out into the world. Okay, question. Protection bottles, jars usually have urine alongside metal nails, blades, needles, etc. How does this even work? The acid would react with the metal and the glass would break soon after. See, that's not... It's not... See, vinegar's a new addition. Vinegar was not ever put in the historic versions. If you... I might have to go grab the book. I will be back in about 5 seconds. I'm going to go grab the book because the guy that wrote the book, he's doing an entire study on witch bottles. If you have the chance, in a few months, the Last Tuesday Society is having a talk about witch bottles. And the guy that wrote this book is doing the talk about witch bottles. I've heard him speak before. He is phenomenal. You can find it on Eventbrite. It's an online Zoom event all about witch bottles. Phenomenal. Love it. He's a phenomenal writer. He's a fantastic public speaker. Eventbrite, the Last Tuesday Society. It's in a few months. It's just called Witch Bottles. You will find it on there. But I will go grab said book and then I will be back. Okay. Oh. Book I have here. This is the book. It is called Magical House Protection, The Archaeology of Counter-Witchcraft by Brian Hoggard. This is what it looks like. It is a super intense book. If you do not want to be reading through a bunch of scientific material, this is not going to be the book for you. But this is the book. It is really, really good. You can get it in lots of places. I got mine from the book depository, as I get all of my books from, that aren't secondhand anyway. And it goes into mummified cats, witch posts, candle marks, concentric circles, overlapping circles, V's, M's, and W's. It goes into written charms. It goes into dried cats, as mentioned, hidden shoes or concealed shoes, bottles, witch bottles, the things that are found within them. It even has X-rays from witch bottles that have been used historically and that have been found during house renovation projects. Now, of course, this book focuses on witch bottles as they are found within Britain. That does not mean that everywhere around the world they're going to be used in the same way. This book, phenomenal. Essentially, I will go over it really, really briefly. What they believed would happen. So you've got to remember here that witches during the early modern period were not positive people. Witches were the negative workers. They were the people doing negative, baneful magic. The wise folk, the peddlers, they had lots of different names depending on the county. These were the people who practiced magic, but for good. They were not witches. And typically, a person was never self-identified as a witch because it was such a horrible thing to be called. The wise folk, the people undertaking these protection workings, were doing counter-witchcraft. So they were protecting the person and the place from the harm that was caused by a witch who was doing negative working on the space. Now, it was believed that by adding energy into the life of a person, you were adding a little bit of yourself into the person that you were targeting. So, you pee inside a bottle. This pee contains the essence of the witch that casts the negative working onto you. It's a tag lock. In a way, it is a tag lock for the witch that did the bad thing to you. You then kill a bunch of nails. Now, to kill something was to see it ritually passed it over into a spiritual plane. So you would ritually break, bend iron nails, which were seen as a protective agent, and they were then added in. Now, in some witch bottles, you also see hair being added in, but this seems to be a new addition. They were then sealed. And in two ways, they were either boiled in a pan over the fire. This was believed to irritate the witch's bladder and force the witch to come to your home, take off the spell, and apologize. If the boiling of the bottle didn't work, it was then buried, typically upside down under the hearthstone in front of the fire, and it was then believed that it would torment and irritate the witch until they took the working off you. So that's what they were originally used for. Obviously, over time, the meanings and the aspect of it has changed, but that's why things are often killed in early modern British magical practice. It was the idea that things were taken from being purely physical to being physical and spiritual. And so the nails were seen as an irritating agent that would influence in the non-physical plane. I hope that this makes sense. The book, I do not do this justice. I really don't. This is not an advert. I just really like this book. It's really good. I am like a good chunk into it, and it's so good. If you have the chance, I would thoroughly recommend going to the talk, because I've heard him speak before. I heard him speak last year on this subject, and it was so good. So good. So yes, I feel like I've missed some things. Thank you so much, Phil, for dealing with stuff. I missed like so much of that. But thank you so much for dealing with that, Phil. I genuinely don't know what I do in my live streams without the mods in general. Like, as a collective, the mods in general make my job here so much easier. So thank you so much to them. They give their spare time to sit and deal with the chat and listening to me talk. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. But yeah, that is the book that I typically recommend for witch bottles, especially if you're looking for early modern practice within Britain. It is a phenomenal book. It's incredibly wordy. Be prepared. It's like reading a university dissertation. But it's really good. It's really good. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up again now and figure out where I was. So that's the herbs video. That's the beginner book video. That's the circle art video. Video? Question. Where was I? Glastonbury? Protection bottles. Got it. Found it. If you need a vlog hiking travel buddy, you let me know. I will let you know, Phil. I might take you up on that one. You don't need to do the fancy stuff. I'd love seeing the area around you in Glastonbury. Yes, for the vlogs. Yes, you want to see them. Okay. I'm sure I can do that. I'm trying to figure out where I was again. Can you recommend a specific Can you recommend a specific book publishing company for witchcraft books? Yes, Troy Books. Hands down, every single freaking time. Troy Books is the shit. I apologize for anyone who is young in the chat. I swear a lot in my real life. I try really hard to censor it in videos, but live streams are not videos. So, Troy Books is the publishing house that has done Traditional Witchcraft by Gemma Gary. I believe it's Troy Books anyway. Silent is the Trees. A Deed Without a Name, I think. I have it right here, this. Let's see. This is one of them. This is Between the Realms, Cornish Myth and Magic by Troy Books. Troy Books, phenomenal. It depends what you're after though. See, I love Troy Books because I focus on folk magic and I focus on drawing historical witchcraft practice into the modern day. That is what I love. And so for me, Troy Books is the shit because they do so many books on this subject and they print them in beautiful hardback just like this. So if you're as obsessed with books as I am, you can get a beautiful hardback like this. I love this book so much. I've spoken about this in one of my past quarterly book breakdowns. So if you do want to check that out, the links, not the links, but the video it's on my channel. So Troy Books is one that I really love. However, if you want something that's more Wicca oriented, then something like Llewellyn Books might be more what you're after. So it's not like one is way better for everyone than all the others, not at all. It's just for me, I like Troy Books. And if you like the kind of magical practice that I talk about and that I practice, then you will probably like Troy Books as well. So it's just worth checking it out. It's important to remember, though, that sometimes you will find a really, really good book that's published through a different publishing house, and that doesn't make that book any less good. That just means they went down a different avenue. Troy Books has some amazing books, but lots of other publishers do produce amazing books as well. So it's not like you have to just buy from one publisher. Try loads of different things from different publishers and just see what works best for you. It's just, for me, I like Troy Books, and I own basically everything that Troy Books has printed in the last 5 years. So that's just my stance on it, but there's lots of books that I like that are published by other publishers besides Troy Books, like, for instance, Magical House Protection is published by Berghahn, a different publishing house. And this one is a really, really good book. So yeah, all based on personal interests. It's just I like Troy books. What is that song? Oh, it's Grandson, that's what it is. Okay. What is the very first step, besides learning, to working with and growing a relationship with the Fae? What is the first step to do? So before I answer this, I'm going to put a giant disclaimer out there. Do not work with the Fae if you don't know what you're doing. Please. I have had so many people contact me asking for help with the Fae because they done fucked up. And I don't want anyone else to have to deal with that. So please be exceptionally cautious when working with the Fae. I don't care if you've had amazing experiences. General rule of thumb, if some can hurt you, treat all of them with caution. That's how I work. Some Fae can be incredibly malicious, so before you go into working with any Fae, make sure you are cautious about it. Now, when it comes to making first steps, I find that being open, being receptive, and being present are really important. I touched on it a little bit with tree spirits at the end of my burnout video, but really when it comes to connecting with spirits of all kinds, if you are distracting yourself 24/7, if you are on your phone, if you are always listening to music, if you are not paying attention, they won't bother to interact with you unless they want to mess with you because you are not open to interacting with them. So think about the kind of Fae that you want to work with. For me, my favourite kind of Fae, brownies. Hands down, I adore brownies. I've worked with them since I was a child. I love them so much. I have brownies in this house. I've had brownies in previous houses. Brownies are found in a lot of older properties. Now, not everyone is going to have brownies, but if you do, you'll likely know it if you start paying attention. Things will be moving around. Little things will go missing, usually shiny things. You'll find that shadows and movements and things in the corner of your eyes, and that's usually a surefire sign that you have some kind of house Fae in your environment. Now, I love working with brownies. It's all about respect. So you could just leave out a little offering, as long as it's safe to do so. Obviously, if you have pets, it's a very different matter. If you have rat problems, it's a very different matter. So just make sure you're being careful with it. But anything like milk or honey or cakes or bread or those kind of things, oats, anything like that, really good. Just a little offering out. Because that first step shows the Fae that are present that you are interested, you are willing to learn, you are willing to take the first steps to build a connection. And that is massive. That really is a step forward. And then slowly from there, you'll often find that you start seeing more, hearing more, interactions start to increase. But just make sure that once you start, you don't just go cold turkey, because that is incredibly insulting. It would be insulting for anyone. It's like being ghosted, right? It's insulting for anybody. So just make sure if you are going to pull back from them, you make them aware of that so they aren't going to get insulted and retaliate. If you're wanting to work with Fae outside of your location, similar kind of applies. It's about being present. It's about taking the time to pay attention to the space around you and acknowledge the spirits that are there. And it's not going to be quick. It's going to take time to sit and contemplate, to pay attention, to look, to listen, to sense everything around you. And over time, they're going to become more confident around you, more willing to show themselves to you. And that's kind of the first step to starting to build that connection, because connections cannot be one way. You can't just be sitting there with your headphones in, with your eyes closed, and expect Fae to interact with you, because they're not going to. There has to be some kind of give or take. But please make sure you are incredibly careful. Don't make any deals. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Trust me. It's not worth it. And don't insult them, please. So be very courteous, very kind, like you were talking to a headmaster in a school or something. You know, just make sure, cautious, because although some people really like to push the whole, I've never had any bad experiences, that doesn't mean that all experiences are going to be good. Until you know otherwise, treat every experience with caution. That way you're not going to get yourself into something you can't get yourself out of. Oh, thank you so much, the occultist. Thank you so much. Do you have any tips for baby witches that get told by other experienced witches that tell them to just give up? Okay. Oh, these people make me angry. They make me angry. So I did say this earlier in the stream, but I'm going to reiterate it again now. Why does their opinion matter? Like, actually think about that. Is it because you really wanted their validation within the practice? Is it because you wanted to learn from them, to grow from them? Is it because you feel unsteady within your own practice? And then think to yourself, why would an experienced, steady magical practitioner feel the need to put me down and tell me I shouldn't do this? Why is that? Because I can't really think of many reasons why I would ever tell someone that they shouldn't be trying to learn and develop their practice. I can't really think of many, unless they were actively hurting themselves and other people. There aren't many reasons why I would ever even consider telling someone that they are not to be practicing, they should just quit. So ultimately, this is a them problem and not a you problem. As long as you are taking care of yourself, as long as you are being willing to be open to learn and develop your magical practice in a healthy, stable way, it really doesn't matter what this person says, because ultimately it's a them problem and not a you problem. And I know I said it earlier, but it's something that we all have to deal with, especially with online witchcraft as prevalent as it is today. You are always going to have people who are going to tell you that you are not good enough, that you are too new, that you only came to it because it was popular. You're always going to have people that say that, and it's about taking a step back and really evaluating why they're saying that. And usually the reason is a them problem, not a you problem. Ooh, okay, this is a cool one. So, how do you avoid waste when using ingredients that are rare or expensive? For example, it feels hard to throw away crystals or herbs in some workings. Okay, so when it comes to crystals, I never throw them away. Once I'm done with the working, I will take them out, cleanse them, reuse them. Always, hands down. I will never throw out a crystal unless there is something weird and funky going on with it that's really messing with me, in which case I will then give it to someone who doesn't feel weird or funky around it, or try to figure out the cause of the weird funkiness. When it comes to herbs though, oh, I love this question. So if I've used herbs, for instance, in a prosperity working, and the prosperity working is now finished, those herbs are going to be imbued with the energy of that working, because some of the energy is going to end up in the items that are surrounding it or included in it. I will gather the herbs up, or the crystals or the items, and I will put them in a bag. And I will write my intention on the bag, put it in the bag, seal it up, put it under my bed, put it in my drawer, like on a desk, in a desk, under my bed, carry it around with me, and continue that intention on. Or if you are using herbs for something like prosperity or protection, you can take those herbs and make them into an oil for prosperity or protection. Or if you do those workings quite a lot, you can gather the herbs up, put them in a jar, and continue using them for that. So every time you then do a working that you want to do for prosperity, you take some of the herbs that have already been used for prosperity before, you add them into the working. Once that working is done, you take them out of the working, you put them back in the jar again. Over time, that prosperous energy is building and building. It's compounding in the herbs that you are using, returning. And over time, the herbal energy will ultimately be replaced by your own energy for that particular style of working. And so over time, you can end up with exceptionally intense magical items that have compounded ritual energy in them that can exceptionally benefit your magical practice in the long run. And obviously it's going to depend on how you're using them. If they're in liquids or if they're in oils or whatnot, you're not then going to be able to dry them out and use them again without them going rotten. But if you're just using dry ingredients, especially rare and unusual plants, and you're using it for the same workings time and time and time again, this way of compounding the energy in them, it is so good. It works so well, especially if you are using them for the same intention again and again and again. So for example, Roman chamomile. I love chamomile. This actually ties in to the next question, which is, do you utilize chamomile in your practice. I do. Now, Roman chamomile is quite an expensive herb. Chamomile, not so much, but Roman chamomile is. I love using both of them. Chamomile is my favorite plant. Full stop. It's my favorite flower. It's my favorite lawn plant. It's my favorite smelling plant. It's my favorite looking plant. I love chamomile. Now, Roman chamomile is really expensive. So when I use Roman chamomile, I will compound the effects of that by using the flowers whole in a prosperity working, and then I will take them back again, store them, use them again, and I will compound them that way. Chamomile in general, I will try to fit into every working. If you ever get a kit from me, a spell kit, a herbal blend, a ritual candle, whatever it is from me, often, if I can put chamomile in something, I will, because chamomile works so well for me that I will use it in as many things as I can get away with. So, for instance, if you want to add a little uplifting energy into your love life, stick some chamomile in it. If you want to improve your finances, stick some chamomile in it. If you want to relax after a long day, stick a shit ton of chamomile in it. Honestly, my fix for many things is chamomile. I love chamomile. It's really great. It's nice to drink, it's nice to use, it's nice to look at, it's nice to smell. It's a general all-round herb. Now, unfortunately, if you don't like chamomile, I use a lot of chamomile in my workings, and you'll see that quite a lot in the workings that I've done on my channel. I often try to take it out of the workings just so I'm not repeating myself too much, but I love chamomile and I use it a lot. I went on and on about chamomile. I'm sorry about that. I've lost where I was. I completely lost where I was. I'm gonna have to go from here, because I think I was about here. Are spirits and ghosts the same thing? The answer to that is yes and no. So a ghost is a spirit, but not all spirits are ghosts. So a spirit is an umbrella term that's used to describe beings that are non-physical. They are creatures, they are entities that are non-physical, that do not reside in this plane. They are in a separate plane. So this can include things like fae, angels, demons. This can include ancestors, as well as spirits that have passed over after death. And so ghosts are spirits, but not all spirits are ghosts. So for instance, you can find spirits in the astral plane. These spirits are often different spirits, so they might be dragon spirits, they might be other spirits. You have fae spirits, which are in a separate plane, but can traverse back and forth. But because they're non-physical entities, they are referred to as spirits. So it's a complicated one, because especially in TV shows, they will refer to everything as a spirit. But spirit covers everything from shadow people, shades, to fae, to angels, to demons, to human ghosts. And it kind of gets a little bit confusing. But ghosts are typically human spirits, like human people passed over into spirit form. They are one of many spirits that are referred to as ghosts. That was a lot of words. I hope that made some semblance of sense. Do you ever use Ogham in Spellwork? If so, is it effective? I do. I love using Ogham. I absolutely love it. I especially use it if I'm working with a particular plant for a working. So if the focus of that working is a particular tree. So for instance, if I'm doing a healing working, I will often use willow. And so I will use the Ogham for willow in that working. If I'm working with birch, I will use the birch Ogham in that working to really connect with and amplify the energy of the tree spirit. As in the coalescing of energy that is created by birch as a plant, which is what you really connect with when you are connecting with tree spirits and tree Ogham. Not only are you connecting with the individual tree, you are connecting with every tree of that kind that has come before it. And it is frozen on my screen. I'm really hoping that it doesn't stay that way for too long. Fingers crossed. So ultimately, you are drawing in on that power from that plant. And so I will use Ogham, especially when it comes to working with a specific tree spirit, whether that be oak, whether that be birch, all of that. It's just really good. It's just really good. So yeah, I like using it for that. I typically won't use them outside of working with a particular plant, mainly because I really like how it directly connects with the energy of the plant. Now, it is glitching quite badly. So I'm really hoping that it starts getting better. I really hope that it starts getting better. Fingers crossed. So I really hope it starts getting better. I'm so sorry if it starts glitching more and more and more. So it's been a few hours. I'm going to go over the rules again for anyone that doesn't know. I answer the questions chronologically. If I'm answering questions and you can't see it, it's because it's probably an hour backwards in the stream. I work behind everyone else, which is why my mods work so damn hard. So everything is answered chronologically. So please do not repeat questions. I will get to it once I get to it on the stream. I just haven't got to it yet. And also, I might not answer a question if I've already answered it in this stream, in a different stream, or I have a full video on the topic, or sometimes I just don't want to answer the question. So, I will keep going. I'm just going to really hope that it starts getting less glitchy. Really hope it starts getting less glitchy. Unfortunately, now that the sun's gone in, I suspect everyone that was outside is now back inside again. So, unfortunately, it might be a bit glitchy for a while, and hopefully it comes back again. So please bear with me, because there's nothing I can do. I just have to hold on and hope that it doesn't distract too many people, unfortunately. Are you a psychic? That's an interesting one. Mainly because it all depends on what your definition of psychic is. I think a lot of people have very strict definitions of what it is. I get a lot of premonitions in dreams. I get a lot of premonitions in, what am I trying to say? Like deja vu style premonitions where I just know beforehand. I see spirits. Spirits talk to me if they want to. That's the thing. It's an if they want to. If I go to cemeteries, I see spirits, I can hear them, I see things at home, and I interact with them at home and when I'm out. But a lot of people wouldn't consider that enough to be a psychic. You know, that might, for many people, just be referred to as sensitive. So I don't typically refer to myself as psychic because where you draw the line is going to be very, very different depending on who you're talking to. So yeah. I'm really sorry about the glitching. I do know that it's happening. Unfortunately, there's literally nothing I can do about it. So you're just going to have to deal with me pulling stupid faces and getting stuck in freeze frames for a while. And we're just going to have to hope that this gets better. So in the meantime, I will answer these two. How much do you charge for readings? I don't offer readings. But thank you so much for the donation. Unfortunately, I don't offer readings. I just don't have time to be offering them and to be doing them. I wouldn't be able to put enough of my focus into doing the readings because I wouldn't have enough time to allot to individual people. And I suspect a lot of people would want readings and I just don't have the time to be doing it. And thank you so much, Relic of Ages. Thank you so much. Here's a tip to get some chamomile for yourself. Thank you so much. I will do just that. I'm actually hoping to go back down to Glastonbury again this year. And when I do, I will be getting some more Roman chamomile because I love the stuff. Apparently, I can't shut up about it. So yeah, just love the chamomile. Where was I? I'm trying to figure out where I was. Do you like Wendy Rule? I the singer? If so, yes. Unless I'm remembering their name wrong. I might be remembering their name wrong. Do not trust me when it comes to remembering names. I am terrible at it. If it is the singer I'm thinking of, then yes, I do. I've got a song in my head. It's a really good song. Grandson is a great artist. If you've never listened to them, fantastic artist. If you like rock style, rock adjacent music. If you don't like rock adjacent music, then you probably won't like it. I'm trying to figure out where I was. Here's a good question in the meantime. Are witches the same as Wiccans? No, not at all. Wiccans are those who follow the Wiccan religion. Now, the Wiccan religion was released to the public in around 1952 by a man named Gerald Gardner. Now, it's believed that he drew on many pre-Wiccan traditions and amalgamated them all together into the mushy gooiness that is Wicca. Now, Wicca is a really new religion. It really did only become known about in 1950s. And it's a really interesting religion. And it draws on a lot of witchcraft practices that predated Wicca. Now, Wicca is a religion. It's very specifically a religion. And depending on the type of Wicca that you practice, different people will believe different things and follow different deities. But witchcraft is a magical practice. It has no attached religion unless you choose to attach it onto it, which essentially means that you can be Wiccan and practice witchcraft, but you don't have to be Wiccan and witch. You can be separate. So you can be a witch without being Wiccan. You can be a witch and being many other different religions as well. So lots of Wiccans do refer to themselves as witches, but it isn't a requirement, and a lot of people don't. I also have a full video on the difference between Wicca, witchcraft, and pagan, if you want to know a bit more in depth about it. I've got it stuck in my head so bad. I'm trying to figure out where I was. Oh no! I actually don't know where I was. How can you cleanse your altar if you don't have any incense or plant material, whatever you choose to use? So this one's a good one. I often use music in some way or another. So sound is a really, really powerful cleanser. And you can do this with your own voice if you practice going up and down through the notes, especially in a bathroom. In a bathroom is amazing for this. You will find there is a note that literally vibrates your brain. It's really weird. And this is really useful for cleansing. I use it a lot for cleansing when I'm by myself. I'll cleanse items with it. I'll cleanse spaces with it. It vibrates everything. And I don't know why it does it. I don't understand the physics behind it, but it's cool. And so you can do that to cleanse your space, to cleanse the area around you. And it's so good. But you can also use sound in other ways. So if you don't want to sing, if you don't want to make noise, you can go on YouTube and type in like cleansing sound. And there's a certain hertz, and I don't know if anyone is going to know what it is off the top of their head. There's a certain hertz which is phenomenal for cleansing, and it makes your body like vibrate. And this is really good for cleansing. Now, you don't have to use sound in that way. It can really be as simple as like ringing a bell. And depending on how you ring that bell as well, it denotes a different type of cleansing. So for me, if I'm after like it's time to move on now, off you go, I'll do like just a little bell. If I'm like, get out of my space, leave me alone, I'll be like bashing on things, ringing a bell super loud. Like, you can really take it to like extremes. But yeah, I really loved and I still love sound cleansing, but often I use rosemary because I love rosemary and it really fits in with the energy of my space. So I like using rosemary, which is what I will use. So if you see me cleanse with a bundle of something in my altar videos, it will always be rosemary because I have a lot of access to rosemary. We grow it ourselves, and I say we because it grows in my parents' back garden and I nick it all off them. And I just love using rosemary for it. But obviously sound is a really good alternative. You think it's 417. So give it a go, see what comes up on YouTube. There's loads of videos like it on YouTube. And if you don't like 417, there's probably lots of others as well, which is really good. You can use salt water and just salt, but obviously do remember that salt is corrosive and salt water is also corrosive. So if you've got a corrosive surface, just be careful not to, damage your surfaces. You can just use plain water, spring water, moon water. I actually really like new moon water for cleansing. So I know lots of people talk about full moon water, but new moon water is really good for that cleansing, get out of my space kind of energy. And so that's a good option as well. So you can wipe surfaces down with it. You can sprinkle it. Just bear in mind though that water can damage surfaces, so just be careful. So yeah, lots of options there. Lots of options. But I really like noise. My house permanently is just a cacophony of noise. It's like the inside of my head. There's like 3 different movie soundtracks and a conversation happening all in one go inside my head. And I feel the need to express that outwardly, which is why every bit of blank space I have in these videos, I am humming something. And the same applies to my magical practice. So I like noise, apparently. Is the moon a god or a spirit? Because I feel really connected to it. Well, okay. I mean, first and foremost, the moon is a cosmic body. It's a celestial body, primarily, because it is. It's a giant hunk of rock that just happens to be stuck in our orbit. But beyond that, there are many traditions who consider the moon to be a god, a goddess. There are traditions that believe that the moon is a spirit in different forms. And it really depends on the culture and tradition that you are a part of as to what the moon represents within that specific tradition. For me personally, because I follow kind of a non-existent tradition, it's kind of a bit of a floating enigma. The moon to me primarily is a celestial body. It is to me a giant hunk of rock in the sky. Whereas to other people, they focus on it primarily as a goddess figure or as a spirit. That's really going to depend on your practice as an individual. I've got it in my head. I need to get it out of my head. But the Winnie the Pooh theme song has not made an appearance yet. It probably will. But for right now, it has not made an appearance. Do you work with planetary energies? I do, to an extent. Not quite to the extent of, like, big ceremonial rituals. I used to be more ceremonial in my practice. But I will definitely draw on specific celestial planetary bodies when I need certain things manifesting or changing, or if I need to work on a specific area of my life. I find that planetary bodies are really effective and they're present permanently. Like, I know that you can work with specific planetary bodies on specific days of the week, not multiple weeks. But I find that they're always present and I can always feel them because they're there. They're out there. They are physically there. They might be light years away, but they are there. And so I find them a really tangible thing to link to. And I think if you are struggling with linking to deities or to spirits, to non-tangible things, try working with planets. It doesn't have to be some big ceremonial style working. It can be something really simple. But because you can see the planets, on a good day you can see Venus, on a good day you can see Jupiter, and they're out there. We have photos of them. We know that they're there. It allows even the most scientific of minds to have something to link to, which can be exceptionally powerful if you are struggling to link with deities and spirits and everything else. It's a way of connecting to something that we know is there. And I think a lot of people can struggle with that, with witchcraft and magical practice as a whole, because a lot of it is energy based. It is focused on the non-tangible, and that can be really difficult, especially if you aren't used to doing it. So something like the planets and plants and the earth is really good to start with. I know I've gone off on a tangent, I'm sorry, but it's really good to work with because it's something present, it's physical, it's something that you can physically see or interact with or touch, which is really good for people who struggle who struggle with that connection. Do you think beginners should try doing hexes? I'll be honest, I'll be brutal. I don't think beginners should try doing anything until they know the foundations of practice, which is something that I've always said on this channel. Centering, grounding, visualization, energy sensing, energy work. These things are all really good foundations for successful magical practice, and they also allow you to protect yourself, which is really important in every working that you do, but especially if you are aiming at a particular person and it's a negative working, their spirits, their energies are likely to deflect it. And when that happens, you get something called a backlash, which is unfun. It's not fun to deal with. So I wouldn't recommend that beginners actually start with any spell work. I would start with basic foundational practices and then start with protections ideally, because that's going to allow you to shield yourself from harm, and then build up from there. Now, of course, you can completely disregard everything I'm saying. That's fine. But that's just my approach on it, because it's the approach I wish I'd have taken, and I didn't. And I learned from experience the hard way what happens if you don't cover your foundational practices. You end up with a really imbalanced starting point, and if you're trying to build a house on broken foundations, you are going to struggle. And then later you're going to have to go back, take all the walls down, rebuild the foundations, and then start from scratch all over again. So always start with the foundational practices. That's my advice. Because I wish I did that, and I didn't, and I had to go back and do it again, and it took me a really long time. And also, I wouldn't recommend doing negative, baneful workings unless you have protection anyway. So make sure you do the protection bit first. And I find anyway that the more you practice, the more you will find other ways of going about things. Now, this is not me shaming anyone who chooses to do baneful workings. If anyone knows me, you know that I'm not afraid to do it if I need to. But I like finding loopholes and other ways of going about doing it, and I would recommend that because it limits the amount of potential backflow you might get from that working. This is an interesting one. When doing spell work, what if you only have a picture of the person? Can it still be effective? Yes, 100%. Yeah. You actually don't even need a picture of the person if you don't have access to it. So although I like to use tag locks in workings, and they are very, very effective. Tag locks, I have a full video on them. If you want to see it, it's on my channel. It's just called tag locks. Just type tag lock in and it will come up. So these are things like signatures, items of clothing, saliva, blood, urine, photographs, full names, dates of birth. These kind of things represent a person. Now, you actually don't need any of those things if you have a connection to the person, if you are a close relative of the person, if you are a friend of that person, if you've been in a relationship with that person, if you can have a good mental picture of that person. Now, of course, not everyone is able to develop a visual mental picture, but even if you remember feelings, remember how they made you feel, recall situations, recall memories, these things can act as a tag lock if you don't have anything else, and they are incredibly powerful, especially if you have strong emotion behind them. If you just have a photograph, you do the same thing, but with the photograph. You add all of that emotion, that energy, the connection you have with that person, you add that into the photograph, and then that acts as an even stronger tag lock if you don't have anything else. I need a drink. Yes, I did bring 2 different glasses of water with me because I didn't have space for my jug. So I have Goblet. If you want to know where these are from, they were from Etsy. I'm in a love-hate relationship with Etsy right now because they're being mean. And I also have my mug, so I will interchange from this point on because I've run out of water in this. Proceeds to spill water absolutely everywhere. Of course I do. I'm so clumsy, it's ridiculous. Okay, I will now have wet legs forever. I just, genuinely, does anyone else just like forget where their mouth is? Because I just did. This is just the way of the day, apparently. Literally. My legs are wet now. I'm gonna be sitting in a wet puddle now. I promise it's just water. You literally just saw me spill it, so... This is how this works. This is how clumsy I am in real life. Shane's just laughing at me. Yeah, I really am just that clumsy in real life. If I can trip over something, I will. If I could if I can trip over something, I will trip over it. If there's a cable on the floor, I will trip over it. If there's a box, I will walk into it. If there's a piece of furniture, I will walk into it. If there's a door, I will get every belt loop and pocket hooked on the door handle. It is just the way it is. That's just how I roll, apparently. Is spilling liquids and tripping over things. The bonus, this is why I always wear black, because if I always wear black, then it really doesn't matter if I spill water on myself. You will never notice unless I do it live on stream, and in which case you will all notice and it will be available on the internet. Fun. Right, it just jumped, so I'm hoping I haven't missed too much of the chat. I'm going to try and speed it up a little bit, just so that I don't lose it, because if you've been here for a while, you'll know that the chat jumps, and if it jumps and there's too many in the chat, it will cut off the ones at the top. So I'm just gonna keep going. Keep going, and hope that it works. Hope that I don't get any more taken off. Do you have to use a wand? Not at all. No, definitely not. You can if you want to. I have several wands in my collection that I will use sometimes, not use other times. The last full ritual that I did, I used this wand. This one. Which is actually the first wand I ever got. This one was from an artisan creator, and I got this about 13 years ago-ish, something like that. This is one of the first ones I ever got, and I used this one in my last working. However, for the majority of workings that I do not use a wand. And the bonus is that wands are tools. They are designed to be an extension of yourself. Now, wands are incredibly useful if you struggle with manipulating your energy, if you struggle with it going everywhere, if you can't focus it on a point. So, for instance, if you want to charge a piece of jewelry or an item or a candle, if you can't direct the energy effectively, the energy is going to go everywhere. It's not going to go where you want. Wands help to direct and to focus that energy. They are an extension of you. So they can be exceptionally useful if you do struggle with that, and especially if you are getting started. They are also really useful in ritual work. They're often a requirement in certain traditions, depending on what the requirements of the tradition are, obviously. And they can be used for opening and closing circles, if you like to do that. Now, for the most part, I will use me good old handsies, because I can't be bothered to use a wand. Which is an option as well. Really, you can use whatever you feel most comfortable with. Sometimes I will use wands, other times I just won't, and it really is entirely personal. I just find, try both ways. Give it a try. If you don't like it, don't keep using it. But you don't need to buy a fancy carved wand. Find a stick that you really like in the woods. Like, find a stick that you like. Ideally, know what tree it's from. If you can't, though, that's not the end of the world. And just give it a go. See how you like it. See how it feels. Some people don't like using wands at all, and that's fine as well. But I would recommend just trying it with, trying it without, and seeing what you like. I typically like my handsies because I do just find it easier for me. And also it means I don't have to keep finding magical tools because I tend to lose them. And as we've noticed, I lose a lot of things and I'm very clumsy, so there's that. Right, let's have a look where I am. Do I seriously have Les Mis in my head? I do. What is going on today? I'm not sure what's going on today. It's been so long since I've seen Les Mis. Why do I have it in my head? I'm doing that thing again where I can't find where I am so I don't say anything because I can't read and talk at the same time. Multitasking is hard. It is really difficult. I'm trying to figure out, I literally don't know where I am. I have gotten so lost. I don't know where I am. I'm here somewhere. Okay, I'm going to answer this one while I figure out what I'm doing, which is any advice on herbal magic? Sorry, you'd be surprised, but Hearth is still underselling her obsession with chamomile. You are right, Phil, I was underselling my obsession with chamomile. It's a problem. It's a problem. Any advice on herbal magic? So my biggest advice really is don't just copy and paste everything you get from a book, because herbal magic is so much more than just rose is for love. Like, that's usually all they'll give you. They're like, rose is used for love. These colours are used for these different types of love. There you go, problem solved. But when it comes to herbal magic, the nitty gritty, and it really depends on the kind of practice that you have. Like, some people have the pseudo-psychological practice where witchcraft is primarily like all in their head and that kind of thing. There's that style of practice, which is a perfectly valid style of practice. And then there's the more folk style of practice where you're working with spirits and beings and plants and they're tangible, living, breathing, energetic things. There's that style of practice. Just being told that rose is for love is good enough if that's the kind of practice that you have, if that's enough for you. For me, that wasn't enough for me. That was never enough for me. So every book that says rose is for love, I would be like, but why? Give me more, please. And no book ever would. So read the books, but then dive into it more. Don't just get a book. Say if you live, for instance, in England. If I buy an American book on herbs and plants, it's going to contain completely different plants than what's growing here. So I add together the information from many different sources. So I take the information I find in books and I then dig deeper. Don't just work with a plant on a superficial level. Connect with the spirit of the plant. Connect with the multiple energy. So not just the spirit of the individual. Connect with the spirit of the plant essence itself. And then you can draw on that in your workings. You go beyond just a correspondence list and you're now working with the spirit of the plant to draw their energy into the working, not just the association into the working. And then look into plants that grow around you, weeds that you might find in your local area. Look into basic garden flowers that you might find. Find the things that are local to you and research them. Spend time with them, interact with them, gain knowledge from them, and also figure out why they have that correspondence. Why are sunflowers associated with solar energy? Now, don't let the name sunflower give it away. There's way more to it than that. Why is the sun so closely associated with sunflowers? What is that link? And is it just the colour? Is it just the name? Is it the fact that the plant follows the sun around the sky during the day? Is it the time of the year that the sunflower is in bloom? And then you start piecing together more and more and more. And suddenly the meanings and the associations of the plants are so significant, because not only is it something that you read in a book that sunflower is associated with the sun, you know intrinsically why it would be connected with the sun, because you have spent time with that plant learning about it from a biological standpoint as well as from a natural environment standpoint. You've spent time in its environment, therefore you know. Like, why is jasmine associated with the moon? Most people would be like, well, it says it in a book. Find out why. And I know that not everyone is going to want to do that, but it can be incredibly useful for developing your magical practice a step further. Do you think the act of sacrificing ingredients for a working is ever useful or necessary? I do. Now, sacrificing an ingredient, by this I do not mean sacrificing animals, I do not mean sacrificing babies. Let's get that out of the way straight away. What I mean by sacrificing, and what I'm thinking that, because sacrificing is in like quotations, sacrificing, is the destroying of things for the purpose of a working. Now, this is seen in this book that we mentioned earlier about the witch bottles and the act of breaking, of killing, of sacrificing nails to transfer them into a spiritual plane to then allow them to work spiritually. It's been used for so many hundreds of years, and it can still be incredibly useful if you sacrifice a mirror. You shatter a mirror for the purpose of adding that emotion, that power that you put into breaking that mirror into the working that you're going to be doing. That's powerful. And the sacrificing of food, of liquids, is also really powerful. And that's some of the most powerful offerings, is the giving of things that you struggle to come by. Is very powerful spiritually. And so you don't have to do it. It's not necessary in any way, but it can be effective depending on the kind of working that you're going to be doing. Can you tell us more about shadow people and what they are exactly? Okay, so shadow people go by lots of names. My preferred term, the term that I've always grown up knowing, is shade. So a shade is a shadow being. They're often referred to as shadow people, shadow men. You see them spoken about a lot. And they are a spirit separate. They are a spirit in their own right. They were not people. They are not ghosts of people who've passed over. They are shadow beings. They are shades in their own right. Some people call them watchers because they like observing. They are a form of spiritual being that appears to us as a shadow, a living, breathing shadow. And they're very prevalent in certain areas. When I lived in Wales, oh wow, so many shades, so many shades. They are essentially sentient shadows. They are shadows without the requirement for light, is the best way I can describe it. They are not created by the lack of light on an object. They exist separate to light, to objects. They are literally living shadows. And a lot of people will see them observing them, and a lot of people get really freaked out by shades. I have worked with shades for the better part of 16 years and love them. Some of the sweetest spirits I've ever encountered. Of course, that's only my experience with them. A lot of other people have very negative experience with them, but they really do keep themselves to themselves. They like observing. Like, they really enjoy being curious and looking at what you're doing and trying to figure out what you're doing. And in many cases, they really appreciate you telling them. In my experience, they like you telling them what you're doing because they're curious, and they were not people. They were not human. Therefore, they're not going to understand why humans do some of the things that we do because they have never experienced it. So I love shades. Shades and brownies have got to be two of my favourite spiritual beings to work with because they're just sweethearts. My Facebook keeps dinging and I am not checking it. It's all the way over there. They're just going to have to wait. So yeah, shades are just, they're the sweethearts. They are the sweethearts of the spiritual world. At least in my experience, to be fair. I'm trying to figure out where I was. What was I? Do you like using oils in your practice? I love using oils in my practice. I absolutely love it. I make my own oils. That is one of the foundations of my business, is I love making magical oils. I've made them for years, love using them, because you can add so many different intentions, so much power into the oil. It isn't just the herbs, it's the day of the week, it's the moon phase, it's the energy that you add into it, it's the spirits that have been worked with for that creation. You can add so much into this tiny concentrated bottle, and it allows me anyway to do workings when my mental health isn't so good. So when I don't have the focus to be spending 2 hours pumping all of this energy and this association into a tool that I'm going to be using there and then, I can do that when I feel like I can. And then when I feel like I can't, I have access to all of that energy, that association that I've added in. I can then use it. When I don't feel like I have the energy to do that right now, I don't need to have the energy to do that right now because I had the energy to do it 2 weeks ago. And so I love using oils, and I find that I use them in almost everything that I do. It also helps that I use a lot of candle magic, which helps. Which helps because candles and oils really do work well together. Oh, I need to get this out of my head. Anything else? Anything other than Les Mis, please, something more cheerful. Please. I feel like sometimes my brain just goes, we're gonna play sad songs today. And I'm like, no. And my brain's like, yeah, you have no choice. You have to. So that is where we're going. If I do not hear Winnie the Pooh, I will be disappointed. I'm sure that Winnie the Pooh will make an appearance by the end of the stream. Do I seriously have Auld Lang Syne in my head? Are you kidding me? This is what I mean. Like, I swear there's like a little part of my brain that's just got like something on remix, and it's like, you've not listened to this song since New Year's Eve? Okay, well, we're listening to it now. Oh my goodness. So I'm doing that thing again where I cannot read and talk at the same time. I promise I'm not frozen. I am just trying to multitask and failing miserably. Yes, here we go. Now this is an interesting point while I continue them. If enough people believe in a moon goddess, would that not then make a moon goddess as a thought form? Could be getting that wrong. So it is, in a way, except it becomes something more. So a thought form is an energetic creation by a practitioner or a group of practitioners that has been created to fulfill a specific purpose. They're also referred to as servitors, depending on who you're talking to and the type of tradition that they are a part of. So thought forms and servitors are created from charged energy, essentially like programmed energy, to fulfill a task. And once that task is finished, they then die. They are no longer fueled by the energy and they cease to exist. Or you can purposefully destroy them. Kind of like how a golem is seen throughout history. It's like a thought form. Now, to take a step above that is something called a god form. Now, a god form is created when a huge number of people put energy into the same being, the same creature, and they ultimately bring it into existence through the energy and the emotion that they put into it. And it's usually found in god figures, when thousands of people are worshipping a set being and they all have the same image of what that being is and who they are and what they do. It's called a god form, and it's essentially like a supercharged thought form. It's really, really interesting, and it plays into the idea that if not enough people believe in a deity, they cease to exist. It plays into that idea, and it really is a fascinating topic in itself that I would, if you want to get deep into the philosophical side of witchcraft, it's really interesting to research into. I still have Auld Lang Syne in my head. I'm not going to keep doing it. I'm not going to keep doing it. I cannot keep doing it. Do I seriously have that Audrey Hepburn song in my head? I do. Oh my goodness. You wouldn't think that 90% of the time I'm listening to like metal and rock music. My internal record player clearly missed that. Oh no, it's gonna jump. No! I knew it was only a matter of time. I'm gonna have to scroll up again. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Actually, I don't think I was that far. I don't think I was that far behind. Oh my goodness, I'm catching up to you. I'm catching up to you. This is an unusual... Actually, it's not that unusual. I've been getting faster at these videos over the past few months. I'm trying to figure out where I was. Do you think an electric device near your altar disturbs the energy? Yes, but I find it's not in the way that you would think. I find that people often say don't have phones, don't have electronic devices near your altar, near your rituals, because they're going to mess up the ritual. I have actually found the opposite to be true. If I have a phone, if I have a computer, anything technological near a working, it won't mess up the working. I will just mess up the device. It will just start doing weird things to it. And so I've learned just to keep electronic devices as far away from ritual spaces as I can. Because otherwise I'm going to mess it up and it's going to take a while to fix it. So I think you can definitely mess up the space with electronic devices, or you can mess up electronic devices with the space. It depends on who you are. I have a terrible habit of messing up electric devices. Like, it's really bad. I actually try to steer clear of some electrical devices because I break them more often than others. But that's because electricity is something that my energy really likes. It really likes electricity. And that's a bit of a problem. That means that every time I plug something into the wall, I nearly get electrocuted. Even when the plug is off, by the way, it's not like I'm plugging something into a live socket. Even when the socket is off, I still often nearly get electrocuted. So I find I've got to be careful with that. I think depending on the type of energy you have, it's going to impact whether the electric device is going to affect your working or your working is going to affect the electrical device. For me, I find that I affect the electrical devices. I'm trying to figure out where I am again. I think I'm actually about to catch up with you. Oh my goodness. I am. This is amazing. Some people talk about vampires and vampire spirits. Can you tell me more about them? So I think when a lot of practitioners refer to vampires, it's not the kind of vampire that you would maybe first think. Most magical practitioners, I think it depends on time period, because I was taught to refer to them as leeches. Now, I don't know if that's going to give you any better idea of what they do, but we aren't talking like blood-sucking vampire. We aren't talking like Edward from Twilight or Damon Salvatore from the Vampire Diaries. I mean, I wish. It's Damon Salvatore. I'm not going to turn that down. But we aren't. We're talking about energy vampires. Now, a lot of people will refer to them as just vampires. I think that gets confusing. They're often referred to as psi vampires or energy vampires. I always knew them as energy leeches, and I think that's just because the people who taught me about energy leeches were of a much older generation. You know, at the time, they were probably in their 70s and 80s. So different generation, different terms, same meaning. And essentially, an energy leech it's someone who takes energy from others, usually completely without knowing that they're doing it. And it's actually kind of bad because people will often not like to be around energy leeches, when in reality the energy leech usually doesn't even realize that they're doing it. So this could be someone, it's kind of caused in two ways. Some people are natural energy leeches. So since they were children, they suck energy out of everyone around them, and it's just something that they've always done. And it's very difficult to deal with if that's the case, because that tends to just be who they are. Then there's another kind of energy leech, which is they don't have enough control over their energy. So they are leeching energy. They are pouring energy off them. Usually you can tell the energy leeches who are like this because you can just feel it. It just hits you like a wall. They have no shield around their energy. They're not conserving it at all. It's pouring off them every waking minute of the day. It's so overwhelming. So what happens is they end up with almost a panic response that they aren't controlling. So they have no control over their energy. They are dropping energy left, right, and center. It's just pouring off them. So they're then drawing energy in as quickly as they can to balance out what they're losing and what they're gaining, which means that being around this kind of person means you feel every bit of energy they have. It's just pouring off them. But simultaneously, they're sucking in all your energy, the bits of energy that you are giving off, because they don't have enough, because they're leeching it all out. And it's really difficult because often the people don't want to be around them. And it's not because they're bad people, it's not because they're horrible people, it's often because they're energy leeches and they don't realize how to fix it, or they don't realize that they're doing it at all. So if someone wanted assistance with energy vampires, with psi vampires, if they are worried that they might be experiencing this, there's a couple of ways you can go about dealing with it. The first is, if you are worried that you don't have control of your energy, work on that. Work on energy sensing, work on energy manipulation, feeling it in your body. Because by processing it, by feeling it, you're aware of where it is and what it's doing. And if you're noticing that your energy is everywhere, it's not like focused in a point, you can't get it to focus on a point, then that's something you need to work on. You need to be working on drawing it into a central location. By doing that, you are stopping yourself from dropping energy left, right, and center, which allows you to retain your energy more, which stops you from having to draw it in from around you. And sadly, that around you could be things, but it's more likely going to be people. When it comes to an energy vampire, that they've always been like that. A shield is probably the only option that I can think of. They're going to have to create this energetic shield so that they aren't drawing energy in from the people around them when they don't want to. If you're dealing with an energy vampire and you don't really know what to deal with, like what to do about it, you putting up a shield is probably the first line of defense. Now, it works, the best way I can describe it is like a shield, as in the Patronus charm from Harry Potter. For reference, I'm going to say it again, I do not agree with any of the statements that have been made by the author herself. I just like the universe and I hate the statements that have been made. It ruins it for everyone. But the Patronus charm gives a food source so that you aren't being fed on, the shield is being fed on. Same applies. So you create this energy shield. So you take a small amount of your energy, spread it out over a shield, maintain it. This then means that when you're interacting with an energy vampire, they aren't taking your energy directly, they are going to be draining the shield. When you come away from that conversation, you might then want to replenish the shield or drop the shield, depending on whether you're going to be around them again. And it can get really difficult, and it's unfortunately just a part of the practice, is that you will come across energy leeches or energy vampires, and how you deal with that is going to depend on your interaction and your relationship with the person, really. But there are other kinds of energy vampires that do it purposefully, and that's a whole different matter in itself. So while you or I might draw energy from the earth or from nature or from, the ground and everything like that, some practitioners will purposefully suck energy in from other people. So, they can break shields if they drain enough energy out of it. I'm talking specifically here about temporary interactions with people. Like, you're going to have to go full in-depth, find someone who specializes in this for long-term things if you have an energy vampire in your house or in your direct life. But if you're just having a relationship with someone, a shield is pretty good short-term temporary protection if all you're having is a conversation with them. If you're spending anywhere from like a few minutes to a couple of hours with someone, a shield is fine. After that point, you're going to have to find something more intense. But unfortunately, some people will do this purposefully. It is like a purposeful, choiceful act that they will take energy from other practitioners. And honestly, dick move a little bit. Like, the least they can do is tell you and get your consent to do that first. Be like, hey, do you mind if we share energy? Because I've done that in workings. Myself and another magical practitioner have shared energy in workings because it can be exceptionally powerful. But it comes down to that level of respect, that level of, are you okay with me doing this? Are we going to mutually do this? Is that an acceptable agreement to come to? And if there hasn't been an agreement, it's honestly just kind of rude to do it. Sorry to anyone who chooses to do that. In my opinion, I find it just to be a little bit rude to be taking energy from someone without getting their permission to do it first. It just seems it crosses over a little bit of a line for me personally. But yeah, it's a really interesting topic, and that's the only version of vampires that I know in depth when it comes to magical practice. Now, there are many people who refer to different things as vampires within witchcraft, but from an individual perspective, like my knowledge on the subject, that is the one that I know of the most. Is it possible the earth and nature sees us as vampires, taking its energy? If you don't give anything back, then yeah. When it comes to grounding, it is about taking energy that you need that's neutral and then giving back what you don't need. And not only do you give back what you don't need, but you treat the earth with respect. I think that's really important. And that's really important for our sustainability on this planet. Like, we can't just be taking. That's not going to end well. We've seen this. It's not going to end well. So I guess, yeah, there are many people who would probably be considered vampires by nature because they take, but they never give anything back again. So yeah, that is a book that has been recommended right there. I will have to give that a go. Actually, I should write that down. I've lost my little notebook. I don't know where I've put my little notebook. But anyway, that is a recommendation by someone who's probably more knowledgeable about the specifics than I am. Right, I'll get back to the chat now. What is the scariest fae you've ever worked with? Boggarts. Yeah, that was not nice. That was, we set ourselves up for failure. We should have known better. I should have known better. I knew it was coming and I still walked into it anyway. Boggarts, fine by themselves, nasty when you get hundreds of them together. I have spoken about the story before, so I'm not going to go full in depth. There are probably plenty of scarier fae as individuals out there, but it also depends on whether you count merfolk as fae. Many people don't, some people do. Merfolk I've had some very unpleasant experiences with them as well. Unnerving, let's put it that way, unnerving, not necessarily unpleasant, unnerving. But boggarts, yeah, I made the mistake of, it was Halloween, it was late on Halloween. The minute I left the house, I knew that something was wrong. I knew that something was wrong. But myself and another practitioner went out anyway. It was not fun. You see one boggart, coincidence. You see two boggarts, maybe coincidence. You see 50, not coincidence. It was not fun. They didn't cause any physical harm. It was more threatening behaviour. And yeah, I've always been very cautious of boggarts anyway. But after that, far more cautious than I was before. Far more cautious. Can shades also resemble animals? That's a really interesting one. I don't know, because I have never seen a shade. I don't know how to describe it. All shades look the same. You can tell that one shade is different from another shade by their behaviour, by their energy. You can identify shade A from being different than shade B. They're two individuals, yet they look completely identical. I have never met a shade that doesn't look the exact same as every other shade I've ever met. They are tall, like Slender Man type tall, which is where, I'm pretty certain that's where the urban legend of Slender Man actually came from. They very much resemble Slender Man in the featureless head, the long arms, the long slim body, the long legs, featureless, like shadows. And every shade I've ever encountered has looked the exact same. I could draw it, I won't because I don't have pen and paper, but it's that recognisable form. I have never seen a shade that looks different than that. And yet, I have had many people talk about seeing cats, like shadow cats or shadow dogs. And it's interesting because are they also shades who choose to take a different form? Or are they spirit animals? Like a different kind of spirit? I don't know. It's a really interesting topic, that one, and I'm not quite sure where to go with it, because it's really curious, because every shade I've ever worked with and met has been the exact same. And yet there's so many encounters that people have with shadow cats, shadow wolves, shadow dogs, shadow horses even. It makes you wonder. It makes me wonder anyway. Aren't Fae a subtype of fairy? No, not in my experience anyway. Fae is a term that is used to describe fairies because fairy is often considered a rude way of describing them. So people use fair folk, fae, little neighbours, good people, as a way of referring to them in a non-insulting way. So, yeah, I've never known fae to be a subsect of fairy. I've only ever, in all my time researching it, have found it to be an alternative term that's used as a less insulting phrase for them. And it's the one that I typically go for because I have had experiences with pissed off fae and I don't want to do it again. So, yes. I'm going to go back up again. Go back up to where I was. Is it safe to communicate and meet shadows or other spirits during astral projection? Ooh, interesting. So this one really comes down to a what do you feel comfortable doing? Safe, I'm going to change the context a little bit because I find that changing the context helps to give people a little bit more insight on what they would do themselves. So you are walking alone in a dark neighbourhood that you have never been in before. What do you do if a stranger approaches you? Or would you choose to approach a stranger in a dark alley in the middle of the night in a place you've never been before? Would you approach a stranger? Now, I think most people wouldn't unless they had more context. The same applies. So I always approach every spirit encounter with a great deal of caution because it's the equivalent to me of meeting someone I don't know in a place I've never been in a really hazardous time. And that's what I apply when it comes to spirit work, especially on the astral plane, because the reality is spirits live in the astral plane. We visit. Two very different experiences right there. So it can be safe, but it can also not be safe. And whether something is or isn't is going to depend on the intentions of the other party, the spirit involved, but also it will depend on how comfortable you are with the environment and the way it works. The more time you spend in a location, the more time you've experienced the mullings and the comings and goings of spirits, just as you would people, the more comfortable you would be to say, okay, I will approach this spirit, but I won't approach this one. It takes time to build up the context that's going to allow you to know whether a spirit is nice or not nice, whether they like people or don't, whether they're comfortable interacting or not. And it's not an instantaneous thing. It's definitely something that's going to take a lot of time and practice to really build up the associations. So like, if you spend every day for a week sitting on a park bench in a town, you're going to start noticing familiar faces, maybe people that are happy to help and people that aren't. The same applies. So it can be safe, but not always. And I know that was a very long-winded way to say meh sometimes, but I hope that the extra context kind of helps, because I know for me it helps to shift the context a little bit. So yeah, sometimes. Can I use Harry Potter wands instead of the wooden ones? You can if you feel comfortable to do it. I have a Harry Potter wand that I got many years ago, and I don't use it in witchcraft because I don't find it to be particularly effective for me. I don't like the material. I find it quite difficult. But someone else might find it really effective. So it definitely is another one of those. See if it works. Compare it to using a wooden wand or a metal wand, and just try different things and see what you find works and what you doesn't. I apologise if you don't like cracking knuckles. I like this one. If your question starts with a "do I have to?" the answer is no. Yeah, usually. Yeah, unless the question is, do I have to respect spirits? And then the answer is always yes. But a lot of the times, if it's a do I have to always use insert magical tool here, the answer is usually always no. Usually, anyway. All those people in that sleep paralysis documentary, terrifying. Hearth, oh man, those guys are the sweetest. It is true. I watch a lot of like conspiracy theory TV shows and ghost hunting TV shows. I'm so fascinated in all of it. And the number of times I see professional ghost hunters, like professional paranormal investigators, saying that shades are the most dangerous spirits that you can ever encounter and that you need to flee in the opposite direction. And I'm just sitting there going, but why? Like, context matters. If the reason you're scared of them is just because they're a dark, shadowy figure and you have associated that with negativity, that's not the spirit's fault. That's your fault. Like, I'm not saying that no one has ever had a bad experience with a shade, because obviously people probably have, just like people have had bad experiences with cats and dogs and, you know, everything else. But I just find it really entertaining in these shows when they're so extreme with it. They're like, oh my goodness, that they are awful and terrible and you need to run as soon as you see one. And I wish these shows would add more context. I always wish that, because I would sit down and watch like a 3-hour documentary on shades and like go through like different encounters, and I would love to watch that. No one ever makes it. Should I make it? If no one ever makes it, maybe I should do it. Maybe that's the way this works. But yeah, I'd love to watch that. Same with all spirits. I don't just want to hear like the phrase scary, bad, run. I want to be like, tell me why, tell me more. I want to know everything. Give me the juicy gossip. What is your favourite deity? I don't think I have a favourite deity. I like all deities equally, and I say this because I think it would be incredibly rude to not say that all deities are equal favourites. Obviously, I'm going to favour my own deities because they are the deities that I interact with on a regular, steady basis. I mean, obviously, that would make my favourites Ceridwen, Keranos, Brigid, and those are the three that I will always say are my favourites because they're the ones that I work with, and so therefore they have to be my favourite. Isn't techno-witchcraft a thing, though? Yes, it is. That doesn't mean that your electronic devices are not going to impact the working. It's important to remember those two things are not separate. Your electronic device will impact the energy in that space. That doesn't mean that it's going to impact it in a negative way. It just means that more likely than not, the electronic device will alter the space, or the space will alter the electronic device. It doesn't mean that you can't use electronics in witchcraft. You just have to be prepared for the fact that it's going to alter it in some way. But if you undertake technological witchcraft or techno-witchcraft or even like urban witchcraft, the things like the electrics that you will use within your practice, you're going to be used to how that interacts with it. So like if you are not used to having a phone in your ritual circle with you, it might really throw you off because you aren't used to the alterations that that electronic device is going to bring. But if you use your phone by you in all of your rituals to read off or to use, then you're going to be used to it. So the same goes with everything. If you bring something new into that space, it is going to alter the space. And it's going to throw you off for the first time or the first couple of times you use it. It doesn't mean that the thing is bad, it just means it's different and you just have to get used to it. So yeah, techno-witchcraft is a thing. And many people do use their electronic devices during ritual. Just after a while, you get used to doing it, and so it no longer throws off the space anymore. Are you excited about Matt? I never know how to say their name. Is it Matt Oren? I think it's Matt Oren's book. I am, because I really enjoyed Psychic Witch. I thought it was a really good book, and I am looking forward to reading more. I probably won't get it when it first comes out because I have so many books in my to-be-read pile. I have so many. I don't think I finished a single book yet from the last quarterly book breakdown because I keep starting new books. I'm like, ooh, new thing, ooh, new thing, ooh, new thing. And I end up never finishing any of them. So I need, through May, to be dedicated to finishing the books that I've started. Otherwise, I am never going to finish them, and that would not be good. How do you figure out what clairs you're more naturally gifted with? So by this, I mean, well, the question means things like clairsentience, clairvoyance. These are psychic abilities that focus in on particular senses. So it's clear sight, clear sound, clear knowing. These are the way that we perceive information in an extrasensory way. I hate that word because it's been picked up by people and I don't like it, but it makes sense. So essentially the way to know is to figure out what it is you're feeling, what it is that you're experiencing in that space. So you can experience more than one of these things. And oftentimes people will experience more than one of these things. I think people see psychic and they think you have to be just one of these things. Like you have to see things, or you have to hear things, or you have to know things. In reality, the majority of people will be able to do many of these things with training. It's something that comes with practice. But to start off with, you might find that one is more prevalent or two are more prevalent than the others. So it's about being in a space and acknowledging and paying attention to what you're experiencing around you. There is a fly. I can see a fly. That is going to annoy me forever now. And see what you experience. So for instance, I have seen spirits, but more often than not, I just know that they're there. I forget which one it is, but the clear knowing is probably nowadays my more prevalent sense. It's, I know what this person is feeling. I know that the spirit is over there. I know what they're feeling. I know what happened to them. And when you look it up, it's all there. And that's just one version of it. some people might see spirits, some people might hear things or even smell things. And so it's all about acknowledgement. That's the thing with all psychic abilities. It's about being able to acknowledge the things. Now, obviously not everything that you're going to experience is going to be psychic. So note it down and then reevaluate after the fact. But pay attention to things. If you walk through a cemetery and you can smell perfume and there's no one around, then remember that, note it down. Say like, what happened on this date? What did you smell? And then acknowledge it. Because when you want to develop psychic abilities, acknowledgement is the first step of development, because it allows you to pay attention to something odd that may or may not be psychic in some way. And by acknowledging it, if it is psychic, you're processing your brain into going, okay, I'm going to start focusing on this happening. And then slowly but surely you begin noticing more and more and more things. You might find that you hear things or you have dreams about things. And by noticing it, you can slowly piece together what it is that you're experiencing. But just don't worry about putting yourself in a box. Because I have met so many practitioners who say, well, I smell things and I also hear things, so which one am I? The reality is that it's not quite as simple as that. They are categories that help you explain to another person what you're experiencing. But they aren't strict boxes that you have to fit into. Yes. Basically. Are things like egregores, tulpas, thought forms, and god forms the same thing from different cultures with different names? Yes and no. So egregores, tulpas, thought forms are the same thing. God forms are like a supersized version of those things, but they're referred to by different names, by different traditions and different cultures. Don't know what this is. This is just coming along with me now. So the egregores, tulpas, and thought forms are the same thing. Different cultures, different traditions, similar practice, similar idea. A god form is like supersizing a thought form. It includes many thousands more people over a longer period of time. And usually it doesn't have an end goal. So usually in a servitor, which is another term for it, they have a purpose, an end goal. And once that end goal has been reached, they are no longer supplied energy and they cease to exist. A god form, because it is created by many thousands, often tens of thousands of people, it doesn't actually have an end goal. It just kind of drifts off into nothingness when no one continues to feed it with energy. It just kind of slowly fades over time, kind of like a battery that you've not changed. It doesn't just poof, cease to exist once it's completed its goal, because a god form often doesn't have an end goal. It just runs out of energy when people stop putting it into it. It's so good. I love all of this kind of philosophical stuff. Has any part of your craft been inspired by works of fiction? No. Sort of. How do I describe this? Works of fiction are often based on real life. And so oftentimes I haven't been inspired by the work of fiction. I have been inspired by the inspiration of the work of fiction. So I'll find something. So for instance, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, I was going to make a video. You'll have to let me know if you're still interested in this. I know it's finished now, but I was going to make a video going through each season and pointing out everything in it that was based on a real practice and what the real practice is and how you can find out more about it. Because the majority of these TV shows, these movies, these books, they're very well researched and they're based on something that's real. So sometimes I will see, for instance, the cord cutting spell that's used in The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. That cord cutting spell is a real cord cutting spell that's been used for so long. And so I will watch the show and I'll be like, damn, I forgot about that. I should do that again. I need to do that again. And then I'll go back to the source material and I'll gain information again from it, anything that I've forgotten about over time, and then I'll do the workings. So it's kind of not necessarily inspired by the TV show, the movie, the book, but it's kind of that like memory trigger of being like, oh, I forgot about that. I should do some research on that. And then I end up adding it back into my practice again. So yeah, sort of. It's like a through path for inspiration. I think, anyway. I feel like I'm sinking as the video is going on because the chair is slowly losing stuffing. So I'm just like slowly sinking. I think I need to sit on a cushion of some kind. I think every bone in my body just cracked at the same time. I think both my knees and both my elbows just cracked in perfect harmony. That is, I'm cracking recently. Cracky. I'm gonna blame it on the weather. That's what most people do, isn't it? Blame it on the weather. Obviously, sometimes it is actually caused by the weather, but I'm gonna blame it on the weather because I don't want to think about getting old. Is it possible that different people will see shades in different forms? I suppose, yeah. I will admit though, everyone I know that's worked with shades sees them very, very similarly. Why is it that word sounds so wrong when you say it out loud? Similarly. That's a different word. Anyway, I have found that the majority of people I've ever spoken to have all described shades the same way. And you can, watch people's encounters online and they all describe shades the same way. So is it a location thing? I don't know. Is it a land thing, like where they are? I don't know. That's something that I really need to look into because it might be the same being is slightly different in different places, which would be interesting. I had to throw in the Winnie the Pooh theme song in at some point. Can you be a witch and not do any spirit work? Yes, you can, definitely. Spirit work is not something that you have to do. It's often something that you might experience as a magical practitioner. The best way to describe it is that being open to sensing energies is like turning on a light switch in a dark room. Like you are the candle in a dark room and you are going to probably attract things into your space that are spirit in nature. And if you don't want to work with them, you don't have to, which is why protections are really useful. And so you don't have to actively do spirit work. You might find that you encounter spirits more frequently as a magical practitioner because of the way things are done, but you don't have to actively choose to work with them, and you can just make sure that you keep them out of your workings and your space if you want to. Oh, it's gonna jump again. Let's see. I've got it back in my head again. I like this one. Shades out here trying to do research on humanity keep scaring off their subjects. I mean, fair. Yeah, can you imagine how frustrating that's got to be? Like, you're just minding your business, observing someone reading a book, and they get so freaked out, they call in like a paranormal investigator, and the ghost is just there like, I just wanted to know what you were reading. I can't read English. Can you help? Like, I can just imagine it's really frustrating to be a shade. Especially a shade in a paranormal, like in a paranoid society. Can you imagine being a shade in the Bible Belt? Like, you're having just Bibles thrown at you, Bible verses chanted at you, and you're just there wanting to observe them. And they're just like lobbing things at you, like holy water here, dodging a Bible there. Like, that's gotta be annoying. Do you think deities can travel abroad? I don't think deities are deities just are. I don't think deities are like walking, talking people like in, you know, Percy Jackson. You know, like, to me anyway, deities are like energetic beings, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world. If you have a connection with that being, they are with you, which is how people connect with deities from maybe if you're studying abroad, they will still connect with the deities that reside within their home, their hometown or their homeland. They can still connect with them even if they aren't there physically. So for me, I don't think deities need to travel. I think they just are. And it's about choosing to have a connection with them rather than them following people around, if that makes sense. That's just the way I view deities, though. Obviously, different people in different cultures are going to have different ways of perceiving deities. These filming lights are so hot. I feel, yeah, my ears are red. My hands are so hot. Because it's so, I forget how hot it is in front of the filming lights. They just pump out heat. Who needs heating when you can just sit in front of boiling hot filming lights? I need like a fan. I need like to counter it out a little bit with a fan. Yes, Phil is a real person. Phil is not some robot. Phil is a real person. Phil is just my suffering best friend who sits through 3 hours of my streams out of the goodness in his heart. Yeah, Sabrina is good. Sabrina is a good idea. Okay, I will finish watching the first season again then. There is so much, by the way. Like, I am literally going to have to break the Sabrina ones down into multiple seasons because there is so much. And people really hated the Sabrina series because the Chilling Adventures of, because they didn't like the satanic aspect of it. But like, it's a freaking TV show. It's a TV show. But there were definitely aspects of it that was so well researched, like unbelievably well researched. I was watching it and I'm like, holy shit, that's real, that's based on it, that spirit is real, this person is real, that's a deity, wow. I was literally blown away by it. That's why I liked it so much. I haven't seen the last season though, so maybe I'll surprise myself by doing the last season as well. But I really took a step back and I was like, that's really cool. That's really good. They had dedication to that. Right, where was I? Deities don't use delta. I like that. I do like that. Any advice for moon magic? Try going outside of the full moon. Like, don't get me wrong, full moon is great, right? Full moon is good. It's fine. But I have found that the majority of books on moon magic focus entirely on the full moon. Or it'll be like 300 pages on the full moon and then 50 pages on every other phase. The other phases are so powerful in their own right. They are so good to work with, and it's worth branching out and trying to connect with the other phases, to try the new moon, to try the waxing and the waning, to give it a go, because a lot of people focus so strongly on the full moon. You see it on social media, you see it all the time, people being like, oh, it's the full moon, I'm going to do all of these things. I'm like, you could have done half of those things, and you probably should have done half of those things before the full moon. Like, I've seen people wanting to cleanse on the full moon. I've seen people wanting to banish on the full moon. I've seen people trying to attract new things in on the full moon. And I'm like, you missed it. Like, I get it. The full moon is beautiful. The full moon is super powerful. But there are even more powerful ways of doing it. So like if you want to attract something in, you want to be starting like after the new moon, really work with that building phase to really push that into your working. If you want to banish something, go through the waning phase, do workings on the new moon. It's an incredibly powerful time. And I've seen so many people kind of gloss over every other moon phase except the full moon. And it's a real shame. Like the full moon, work it. It's great. It's really good. But there are other ways of working it that are maybe a little bit unpopular that can be exceptionally powerful and actually have the ability to be more powerful than just doing everything on the full moon. Yeah, for reference, we're talking about the mods in the chat. Mods are typically on the side of cautiousness because an uncontrolled chat is a dangerous chat. You know, the people on the other side, like the viewers of the stream, don't often see the things that get said by people. And that's because the mods do a great job. They take the brunt of it. The mods and the system take the brunt of getting rid of a lot of the bad things that are said. So erring on the side of cautiousness is good. Yeah. Wow, your hands are red. They are. This is the downside of being really pale. Every time I get warm, I go bright red. So it's very hot in here. I'd say it's probably like 25 degrees in here. It's very warm. I am very warm. I'm looking forward to going into a room that is a little bit cooler. I will guide people once again to the chat rules on the screen. If I've already answered a question, I'm not going to answer it again. If I don't have a good answer to the question, or I've answered it in a video, or I don't know anything about the topic, I will usually not answer it, because there's nothing more boring than reading questions and then going, I don't know that one. Reading another question and going, I don't know that one. So if I don't know the answer to a question, I won't answer it, because it's either not my place to answer it, or I don't have enough information to be able to give a valid answer. And to me, there's no point in just putting out random waffle into the universe. If I don't have anything of value to add to a topic, I usually won't. Usually. Unless I'm able to like point people in the direction of someone who will know, I usually won't answer it. And also, sometimes I just don't want to answer a question. That happens too. Right. Here we go. It jumped. I'm gonna have to go back up again. I don't think I'm too far off the bottom now, which is good. Can you use mulin? I can never say the name of this. Please don't make fun of me for not knowing the name of this word. I can spell it. Never had to say it out loud. Mulin. Mulane. Mulin? I always call it Mulin, but I don't think that's how you say it. It's like reading a book. You know when you read a book and you read a character's name and you just go, that's good enough. And then you hear someone else say the name of the character and you're like, wait, that's the same person? For instance, I've been reading like A Court of Thorn and Roses, that whole series, and I have been calling him Risland for 4 books, 5 books. And the L doesn't exist. It's it's Riz and Risand. My brain doesn't like it. It puts an L in it. So now it's Risland. And even though that's not his name, that is what my brain has decided his name is from this point on. I did it with the Morganville Vampire series as well. I said his name wrong in my head the first time I read Mernin's name. I said the name wrong in my head and went, good enough. And then I was in a conversation with someone and they're like, you know that's not how you say his name. I'm like, I know, but this is the only name that my brain now recognizes. I do the same with plants. Like, I read the word Mullein. I read that as Mulin. And I'm pretty certain that's not actually how you say it. but we're just going to go with it. Please accept the fact that this is just how I've decided to say it. And yeah. Oops, can you use them for the flowers for the same as the leaves? I would say it depends on whether this is for consumption or witchcraft. I mean, both of those can be simultaneous, but you know what I mean. In many plants, from a medicinal standpoint, now please remember here, my stance on this, do not replace modern medicine with witchcraft. Make sure that you are always seeking appropriate medical assistance for anything, and then do witchcraft secondary. But when it comes to plants, the flowers, the leaves, the roots, they often have different components that cause different things. So if this is for consumption, I wouldn't recommend substituting out the flowers for the leaves unless you are certain that it is for the same thing. When it comes to witchcraft, I would say go for it, it's fine. I use them interchangeably and have had great success doing that. But obviously it is going to depend on what you're using it for. I wouldn't necessarily suggest consuming anything if you aren't certain if you can use it for the same thing. Thank you so much. I love your work. Are you still working on your book? And what will be in it? I'm not going to tell you what's going to be in it. I'm still slowly chipping away at it, but I'm just not convinced it's where I need to put my energy right now. I don't know, I'm struggling with it. And I think that is a good sign to say that I need to be putting my energy somewhere else right now. And when I need to write the book will write itself. That tends to be my mindset with these things. Like, when I need to write the book will write itself. If I have to force the book to be written, then it should not be wrote. Not proper English, but it sounded good. So that's kind of where I'm at the minute. Yeah. It's struggling to form itself at the minute. So I think I'm going to move my attention to something else and then come back to it at a later point. That's the plan anyway. I think the full moon is just the popular thing. Yeah, it is. And that's the sad reality of it, is that a lot of people will just follow what's popular, and that's fine. I would just say, if you're really interested in getting into something, just make sure that you go beyond just what's popular. When it comes to books on the moon, I don't really know. I know I have some. It's more a case of where. Where are they? Good question. I'm not entirely sure. I like the author Alquist. I've forgotten what their name is. It begins with a D. Is it Denise Alquist? I'm not sure. Alquist. The books are, there's Moon Spells, but that's not the only book they've written. There's another book that's better than Moon Spells, but Moon Spells is the only one on there that I found. The same author has written at least 2 books on the subject, and I quite enjoyed them. I will have to look into more books on the subject, but because I find moon magic quite... The word basic isn't the right word, but it's something that I started with, and now I don't really need books on it, so I don't buy them. So I'm going to have to look into books on the subject, even if it's just to be able to give modern recommendations. Oh, it's gonna jump. Right, though, I will be honest. I think I am going to leave it at that. It is incredibly hot in this room. It has been a warm day and it is incredibly hot in this room. And I think we've gone through a lot of questions tonight. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone who has joined me, for those who've been here the entire way through, for the mods. Yes, the mods, because goodness. I'm also in the process, I've asked my Discord mods to help me set up a Discord chat for the YouTube mods. I am not Discord savvy, so I've had to ask people that are if they can help me with it. So hopefully that will be done soon. But I want to say thank you to everyone who has been here, who has sent a message. I apologize to anyone whose chat I didn't get all the way through, to the messages that I didn't answer and the questions. Hopefully you will find answers in other videos that I have done on my channel or in other live streams. I do these every month, so it's usually the first Wednesday after the 15th. Now that sounds really specific, but it's because we get the mystery box out on the 15th, and I do not have time before the 15th to do the live stream, so it's the first Wednesday after the 15th. And obviously that's going to change depending on the month. Usually I will post about it the day of or the day before on the channel, so you can check that out. And yeah, thank you to everyone who has supported. And I want to say thank you for the merch. So many of you have supported me with kind words and kind messages about the merch, and some of you have got the merch, and I really, really appreciate it. I'm so excited to see people get it, and I hope that everyone likes it. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you so much for supporting me, whether that's a donation or just liking the stream. It honestly makes a huge difference to like and comment and all that stuff. And so for those of you who have been here, thank you so much. And I will see you next week. We are going to be learning about tea leaf reading. That is next week's video. So I hope that you all enjoy that, because it's been fun to film it and edit it and get it all done. So I also look different. So I'm sorry if I alarm anyone by looking different in next week's video. I realised that I've had a very consistent look through my YouTube journey, and next week is just like cottagecore. And I'm not quite sure what happened. The sun was out and I went, I want to wear a dress. I'm not really sure what happened, so apologies if I alarm anyone. But yeah, anyway, I'm gonna go have a drink and calm down because I'm a little bit hyperactive, and I will see you in next week's video. Okay, and if you do have any questions, I try after the stream to go through my Instagram, which is linked in the description box, to answer some questions on there as well. Okay, I'm gonna go. Right, I hope you have a marvellous, magical day, and I will see you in the next video. I went a little bit Somerset then. Not quite sure what the accent was. Okay, anyway, I'm gonna go. I'm not sure what's going on here now. Right, bye!